Afternoon showers 17 and 25. Mahakeng partly cloudy 16 and 24. Vryburg partly cloudy, isolated showers and thundershowers 15 and 30. Mangaung partly cloudy, isolated showers, thundershowers 13 and 29. Kimberley partly cloudy, isolated showers and thundershowers 17 and 30. Uppington partly cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers 21 and 32. Cape Town fine, partly cloudy in the afternoon, a moderate to fresh southeasterly 16 and 24. George cloudy, isolated showers, thundershowers from the afternoon, a light southwesterly wind 18 and 22. Gqeberha cloudy, scattered showers and thundershowers, a light to moderate southwesterly 16 and 24. East London partly cloudy, becoming cloudy, isolated showers, thundershowers from the late afternoon, a light and variable wind 18 and 24. eThekwini partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh easterly wind 19 and 28. Richards Bay partly cloudy, isolated showers and rain, a moderate to fresh easterly wind 21 and 28. And Pietermaritzburg partly cloudy, isolated showers and thundershowers 17 and 31.
Think bigger than just a banking partner. Think a team of specialized experts supporting you to make better financial decisions to enable your growth aspirations. Think a strategic partnership providing indispensable advice to help you make the right moves. Think bigger. Think Nedbank Commercial Banking. For more information, visit nedbank.co.za. See money differently. Nedbank. We're a licensed FSP and registered credit provider.
The Blues are looking for nothing but victory to cement a decent top half position.
Mudryk takes over. Mudryk's through. Mudryk round the goalkeeper. Oh, it's fantastic.
But the Clarets need full points to step out of the uncomfortable zone.
Come on, Jakob. Jakob Brun-Larsen scores. Burnley. Perfect penalty. Keeper went the right way. Too much on it.
This is the Premier League. Witness the superb contest between Chelsea FC and Burnley FC on Saturday 30 March at 4 p.m. live on S3. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
21 minutes after 6, good morning. The United Nations Security Council has now adopted a resolution calling for a full ceasefire in Gaza and calling for peace there for the period of Ramadan. The United Nations Security Secretary General Antonio Guterres saying a failure to implement such a ceasefire would be unforgivable. Our International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor saying she welcomes the resolution and work must be done towards a long-term peace. The resolution was passed because the US abstained. In other words, the key aspect of this is that the US did not veto the resolution to protect its ally Israel as it has done in the past already. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has cancelled a trip to the US by two of his senior advisors. Zinat Adam is the Deputy Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East Center. Zinat, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Firstly, this is crucially important for many reasons, and I'll get to the US in a moment. But first, is there any prospect of Israel actually implementing a ceasefire, or is it just going to continue with its offensive?
It certainly appears as if Israel is not interested in abiding by this resolution and is defiant. We've even heard in the last few hours that there have still been F-16s flying over Gaza and the potential for an attack in Rafah, despite the resolution having passed.
So, back to the US then. It did not use its veto. Netanyahu cancelling this trip to the US by two of his advisors. This is surely part of the significance of this, that the United States appears to finally be changing its stance towards this conflict.
It is certainly a shift in the American position not using the veto. However, what we've heard is that, for example, from Kirby saying that this is not a binding resolution. Now, this is a very problematic interpretation of how the United Nations resolutions at the Security Council level work. All resolutions by the Security Council are binding. So for the USA to now curl back and say that this is not binding is difficult. What it isn't is that it hasn't been found under Chapter 7 of the United Nations Charter. And that, in fact, means that there is no enforcement mechanism should Israel not abide by this resolution or any of the parties that the ceasefire affects.
In other words, and this has always been the issue, there's nothing anyone can really do to stop Israel doing what it's doing.
Unless it was under a Chapter 7 binding resolution with punitive measures, then no, there wouldn't be any intervention, but for perhaps some statements that may come thereafter. What we have seen, however, is that Hamas has welcomed the resolution. There are a few caveats to their welcoming of that, and they refer to the issue of the unconditional release of hostages, speaking only to the Israeli hostages, and what they're interested in is an exchange of prisoners that would include the 7,000 Palestinians held by Israel.
There's a lot more to this, though. I mean, one of parts of the significance of this, I presume, is that it is a symbol of how isolated Israel has become, and that matters.
It absolutely does, and I think that there is increased pressure on Israel and on the United States to take action in the face of this genocide, and there is a level of undeniability that the kind of carnage that has taken place has to come to an end. The difficulty is that this resolution is only for the next 2 weeks, because it speaks to until the end of Ramadan, which literally is 2 weeks away, and then working towards a lasting truce. It's quite insufficient, but it is a step in the direction of what we've been hoping for the last 6 months, and that is for action coming from the Security Council.
So then, does anyone in Israel seem to care that Israel is now so isolated? There was a time when much of the West supported Israel, and we go back even further, and Israel could almost rely on strong support from many countries. This has changed fundamentally since October last year.
It certainly has. The United States appears to be very frustrated with Netanyahu's government and the extreme right-wing policies that they have taken. But this is a survival mechanism for Netanyahu. If he doesn't continue in this line, he faces being removed from office and possibly being prosecuted. There's also building opposition within Israel itself, and that makes a big difference to the voting. But I think from an international perspective, we're also seeing a shift from the European countries saying that they would want to recognize a Palestinian state. Now, statehood recognition is quite a controversial issue because not all Palestinians are favorable to the two-state solution. But what it's indicating is at an international level, there is a shift in terms of the fundamental support for Israel. We've also heard from the Qataris just before the resolution was passed that they're frustrated with Israel hindering negotiations towards the hostages being released, and that in fact the Israelis have become the impediment to that. So I think that all of this has been a build-up. But from the United States, it's kind of not quite reached the level that we would want to see it. Yes, they've held back in terms of an abstention and not using the veto, but concurrently they've cut the funding to UNRWA, they've cut funding to the UN Commission of Inquiry investigating war crimes, and they're looking at punitive measures against South Africa for the position that we have taken at the ICJ.
Zeenat Adam, thank you, Executive Director at the Afro-Middle East Centre. 27 minutes after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Safa Adam and Hugo Bruce going nowhere.
I know, it's a bit of a football soap opera at the moment, and I can tell you that Safa is adamant that the Bafana coach is staying, despite a report in the Tunisian media saying that the Belgian is set to leave South Africa and join that country's national team. According to a report on the website of Tunisia's Mosaic FM, Bruce is exploring how to get out of his contract with Safa and join Tunisia directly. Now, the coach who steered Bafana to their best Africa Cup of Nations finish in 24 years with the bronze medal last month is in Algiers, where the South Africans will meet Algeria in their FIFA series. It's a friendly match at Stade Nelson Mandela tonight, 11 p.m, and you can catch it live on SABC 1. Elsewhere, the Wales manager Rob Page says the team have come a long way since the retirement of Gareth Bale as they prepare to host Poland in a playoff final tonight tonight with a place at Euro 2024 at stake. Now, victory in Cardiff could take Wales to a third successive European Championship and a fourth major tournament out of 5 after they qualified for the 2022 World Cup. In the meantime, Scott McTominay says it's not all doom and gloom as Scotland seek to end a 6-game winless run when they face Northern Ireland. Tonight, Steve Clarke's squad are smarting from a 4-0 friendly defeat against Netherlands in Amsterdam, and that was on Friday, the first of 4 warm-up games ahead of Euro 2024 in Germany. On to some cricket news, and with a 49 ball for 77, Virat Kohli led the Royal Challengers Bengaluru to a 4-wicket win over the Punjab Kings, with RCB requiring 47 of 22 balls to better the Kings 176 for 6. The 38-year-old Kohli smashed an unbeaten 28 of 10 balls with 3 fours and 2 sixes to secure victory with 4 balls to spare. Earlier, skipper Shikhar Dhawan hit 45, and that was for the visitors. Tennis action, the number 16 Ekaterina Alexandrova ending Iga Swiatek's quest for a second sweep of the Sunshine Double, defeating the world number 1 6-4, 6-2 at the Miami Open round of 16. And that was last night. The victory is Alexandrova's first career win over a reigning world number 1 and puts her into her third WTA 1000 quarterfinal. Now, a quarterfinalist in Miami last year, Alexandrova will face the number 5, Jessica Pegula. Pegula advanced to her third consecutive Miami quarterfinal by defeating the number 20 seeded Emma Navarro 7-6, 6-3. More sport on Sunrise at the top of the hour. For SFM, I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. You're with SFM leading the conversation. We'll find out more from the Border Management Agency about how it's going to manage the situation over the Easter period. There's no load shedding for the moment. Stage 2 later at 6:30 now.
And in the headlines, the Electoral Commission says 42 candidates appear on more than one party list. It has implicated 39 parties in the problem. One candidate was nominated as an independent and also appeared on a list of a party. The Commission revealed this after yesterday's 5 p.m. deadline expired. In other news, the High Court in Johannesburg is expected to deliver judgment in the matter between the ANC and the Electoral Commission. The ANC is challenging the Commission's registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, arguing that it is unlawful. The Commission says the ANC failed to object to the registration on time. And the United States has called for an immediate surge in desperately needed aid to Gaza in the wake of the first UN Security Council vote in favor of a ceasefire. I'll be back with more on these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, we've been warning about this. It's the roadworks on the R21 between Pretoria and the airport with some lane restrictions just coming into Olifantsfontein Road at Clayville, and we can just see the traffic starting to build up there. It will get a lot worse if you're coming in for those important flight connections and you want to get there at a desired time. Make sure you've got probably 30 or 40 minutes of peak morning and afternoons to get through there. It's just the greater volume that squeezes into the lanes that are available and causes the backlog. Joburg's Mike 1 fairly heavy today from Ormonde right through to Smith Street in the Braamfontein area. Bit of protesting to watch out for just north of Chatsworth down at Durban Link Road, just by the Bottlebrush Informal Settlement. Some rocks and some branches over that section of roadway a little bit early this morning. There might be some disruption there. Yesterday, the lights were down at Trade Centre, the Phoenix Highway out towards the R102. Looks fairly busy this morning. Those lights might still be down. Traffic coming out of that side of Phoenix a bit heavier than you'd normally expect. Cape Town's N7 slowing up towards Klipfontein Road. That's a problem if you're coming out of the Mitchell's Plain area. And if you're perhaps away for a little bit of an earlier break into Easter, or you've got the kids on school holidays and you're travelling in the Western Cape, there are some roadworks, a couple of sets of stop-go controls between Albertinia and Mossel Bay, and that's a key route this time of year. So just extended waiting periods at a couple of those locations to get through. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ray Machlaka, good morning.
Good morning. Hi there.
Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Well, it is US markets that are up and leading with gains. Investors are still optimistic about a cut in interest rates around the world from July this year. In the US alone, 3 interest rate cuts are expected this year. And later in the week, inflation data in the US will be released, and that will give clues about the outlook for interest rates. And before the US market opens later today, the US futures market is up. Nasdaq, Dow Jones, and S&P futures are each up 0.1%. In Asian markets, Hong Kong's Hang Seng is down 0.1%. China's Shanghai Composite is down 0.4%, and Japan's Nikkei is also down 0.2%. And in the currency market, a bit optimistic about the state of the economy and the state of their finances. The optimism among consumers might result in them spending more money in the economy. The Consumer Confidence Index compiled by FNB and the Bureau for Economic Research improved in the first quarter, but still remains in negative territory. This suggests that consumers are still anxious about the economy, specifically the high cost of living, and consumers are worried about high inflation, elevated interest rates, and higher petrol and diesel prices, which all reduce their purchasing power.
And then the Easter shopping season, it should boost our retail sector.
Yes, and this is according to a study conducted by a financial services company called Capital Connect, which also operates in the retail sector. Capital Connect expects retail sales over this upcoming festive season to grow, Easter weekend rather, to grow by between 1.3% and 1.5% compared to last year's Easter period, and this might translate into retail sales worth 2.2 billion rand. Easter and the December festive season are usually a boon for the retail sector, with increased shopping by consumers.
Ray McClark, thank you, Ray. Of course, back in an hour's time. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
Africa Update on SAFM Sunrise, a continental overview of current African affairs.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, good morning.
Steve, refresh your morning and Jumbo Africa to the listeners.
All right, what's happened in Senegal? We've got a result.
Stephen, those results will be coming out today officially as provisional results to be confirmed by the court on Friday. But what we have seen, we say from prison to the State House, Diomaye Faye is now being declared. Yesterday we saw the ruling coalition accepting that outcome. And as we said, Stephen, he was a young man who was also a close friend of Ousmane Sonko as the Secretary General of the party, rose to this office from being a mere tax inspector, a law graduate from the Dakar Cheikh Anta Diop University, devoted Muslim. And also, Stephen, when you look at his role that you have seen now, is age 44 now. He says that it's a coalition. He's got more than 120 people that he'll have to see how they will be part of the government and to revive the economy of Senegal. And like we said, Stephen, we are officially waiting for those outcomes as they will come from Dakar. But it appears is the current president, Faye Diomaye Bassirou, is the new president of Senegal.
And then in Nigeria, there were 100 students that were kidnapped. They've arrived back in Kaduna.
Stephen, we are talking of 137 young people here and their teachers who were kidnapped in Nigeria, in Kaduna region. And the military chief saying that, Stephen, bad intelligence also hinders them to fight on these kidnappings that have happened in Nigeria. You'll recall, Stephen, we had the Chiboko girls who were kidnapped at some point. Now they are talking about community intelligence to assist them to deal with the kidnappings that are happening in the northwestern part of Nigeria, Kaduna.
And then in the Pan-African Parliament yesterday, Zimbabwe's Deputy President of the Chiefs Council re-elected President of the Pan-African Parliament. This is a sort of rotation by region, right?
It is the rotation, Stephen, but he's going for the second term. Despite that, there were many issues that others wanted for this to be stopped when the High Court in South Africa dismissed an application from Botswana who didn't want Churumbira to be retained as the leader. But that was not only the vote yesterday, Stephen. We have Mauritania, first president of the parliament, as well as Chad being the fourth vice president. Both the first vice president and the fourth have been left vacant, Stephen, for now. But we know Churumbira, there were many allegations against him, but yesterday he got the seat to become for the second term as the president of the Pan-African Parliament. This time, Stephen, it was not a chaos and crisis that we saw when he was first elected.
I remember that. In Malawi, President Lazarus Chakwera declaring a state of disaster.
And Stephen needing more money now. He's talking of 200 million in humanitarian assistance out of 28 districts he went on to declare it in 23. And this is due to the El Nino, the drought that is causing havoc in the SADC region, Stephen. And that's where the shortage of food comes in there. And this also shows that even Zambia, you'll recall, also had the same issue of food crisis and the heat and the El Nino crisis that they've been facing in the SADC region. But President Chakwera yesterday asking more money, Stephen, from the UN as well as from the SADC region.
And then you're taking us back to this day, March the 26th, 1986.
Stephen, this was 38 years ago when the apartheid South Africa and the Lesotho government issued a joint statement that their territories should not be used for acts of terrorism against each other. We know the history of Lesotho, Stephen, through its independence from 1966 until 1990. There were many liberation movements who were in Lesotho, and the South African government used to have many raids in Lesotho. We recall those of Crisani who were also raided in Lesotho, but they could not arrest him. So this is the history that came 38 years ago in 1986. Asante Sana SG, as we are still leading your conversation, SAFM, observing the human rights man.
Russ Advocate Sipho Mantula, thank you very much indeed. Back tomorrow, more news from our continent through the day, 20 minutes now to 7.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
Well, calls, voice notes coming through about the Electoral Commission, about all sorts of other issues this morning. I think there'll be more conversations around the National Assembly Speaker to come as well. Voice notes on 0614 104 107.
Good morning, SG. It's Vuano from Durban. SG, it's a nice thing that SIU is going after all the Gupta companies and stuff. But when are they going after Ramaphosa on the Glencore and Ramaphosa shared deal? And when Ramaphosa was the chairperson of the war room, when are they going after that? Because we know with Phala Phala, it doesn't seem like they're moving. Look how quickly they move with the speaker in terms of the money. But Ramaphosa with money, that foreign currency, we have not even heard them saying, oh, we're going there, we have a search warrant.
The Hawks have taken a long time over the Phala Phala investigation. I know there was an investigation. There's several agencies. I'm not actually sure where they are with it. Bramoro on the line from Mangung. Bramoro, hi, the Electoral Commission. This is about MK.
100%. Good morning, Stephen and the team. Honestly, I'll be very disappointed if the Electoral Court ruled in favor of the ANC. One, ANC had all the previous years to just fight against the NK, for probably Jacob Zuma, for using that name. Stephen, if I may ask, please, when was the 2019 election for the month?
When was what?
Yeah, the last election, which is 2019,
yeah,
which got President Ramaphosa. Which month was it held?
I think it was May, if I remember correctly. Why?
Okay, so why doesn't the Constitution stipulate that every person is entitled for 5 terms? But the term starts from probably January, maybe every January of 5 years, there should be a compulsory mandatory election without it being proclaimed by the president. Like if you check the Constitution of Ghana, for example, every citizen knows that 7th December of every 4 years is general election in the country.
The United States does a similar thing. I think they say I think it's on a Tuesday after a certain time or something they do it. Look, I mean, I don't know, but I think the difference might also be that we're a parliamentary system and not a sort of presidential system.
Okay, I'll probably support that. Lastly, please, can you check Mangaung? Our metro traffic cops are doing something terrible to us. There are no road markings in the city. There are no visible road signs. But if you park your car anywhere else, you find the car being towed to the government garage, and you are being told to pay almost 2,000 rand. just for you to get your car back.
Sure.
It will be ideal for them to put road signs there.
Yeah.
Steve, if I invite you to the city today, there's 90% chance of you being have your car impounded by the city because there are no visible road signs, and you find yourself in that trap.
All right, Bramoro and Mangaung, thank you. There must be a great case there somewhere for someone about a lack of road signs when your car's towed. Thank you. And Vusi in the line from the Eastern Cape. Nosavuma Peace and Gakula. Go for it.
Good morning. Look, I think the remarks made by the president in response to the media questions were correct and fine. Because the president is not the arresting officer or the NPA. He is right to say the process must take its course, it must unfold, because it is in the interest of the speaker, in the interest of justice and the ANC, as well as the people of our country, to get to the bottom of these allegations. It doesn't help that the information about such pending arrest, the contents of the docket, are with the media before they are dealt with by a court of law. Because you know that the registrar of the court issues those to the public at the right time. What that does is it weaponizes the justice process against an accused person.
So your problem is the leaks?
It is the leaks because those leaks are not regulated by ethics.
Yeah.
You know, we don't know why the person who leaked this thing and what are the objectives. Actually, the outcome might even affect the justice system. It might affect how the NPA will lead its case. And I think we make a mistake sometimes of rushing to conclusion based on the narrow information from the leak, and we don't know the full side of it. And I think this is the same case with the electoral case that the ANC has applied for. People are assuming that the law says what they want, they're not regarding what the law provides. Yeah. So we may take decisions or make opinions here based on something that we don't know. I expect, by the way, the current NEC to take the same stance and on everyone that is found is charged, that is found to have done things wrongly. And I think we should really hold the leadership of the ANC to account because that's what the manifesto of the ANC commits.
Yeah, Mvusi, thank you. Yeah, I think it's a strong point about leaks. I mean, as a journalist, I love leaks, obviously, but there is a strong argument against them, and it shouldn't really happen, I have to concede. 14 minutes to 7.
When South Africans think security, they think Trilidor. With 6 months interest-free financing and over 54 franchises around the country, you can always find the security product and price that's right for you. Visit trilidor.co.za or call 0861 Trilidor today. Trilidor, the ultimate crime barrier.
In a world driven by innovation, where progress knows no bounds, it's those who dare to dream, to push boundaries, who power our future. Join over 15,000 tech champions, visionaries, and trailblazers at Africa's largest tech event, exploring innovations across technology as we leverage tech for a more sustainable, connected tomorrow. Join us at Africa Tech Festival in Cape Town from November 11 to 14. Register your interest at africatechfestival.com.
Blue and Gold Army are happy with their performance in the DStv Premiership, and they want to triumph against Gold and Black to stay in the top 5. However, Amakosi want to bring back Injabulo to the Kosi Nation. The Citizens battles it out with the Glamour Boys. Catch Mzansi's beautiful game, Cape Town City versus Kaizer Chiefs, on Saturday 30 March at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
Well, lots going on this morning. As you know, the Border Management Agency says it's ready for the Easter period, traditionally the busiest time of year at our border. More people going in and out of the country in a shorter space of time than any other period of the year. 400 junior security guards also working on the borders this year. They started their training with the BMA last year. The Commissioner of the Border Management Authority is Dr. Mike Masiapato. Dr. Masiapato, Commissioner, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, and thanks for the invitation.
What are you doing over the Easter period that's different to what you normally do? What measures are you taking?
Yeah, firstly, Stephen, what we do, as you had indicated, we are really having our plans in order on the basis that we will be, mandated in a way to administrate high numbers of people, and in a very short space of time, as you have indicated, just over a weekend. We are anticipating that the apex of the exit phase in particular is going to be on Thursday, the whole day towards the evening. And of course, the return leg, the apex will be on the 1st, that is Monday next week. So on that basis, one of the things that we had to do, Stephen, was one, to increase some operating hours in some of the ports which do not work on a 24-hour basis. We have extended most of them by 2 additional hours. Some of them we used to close them around 10. We'll close them at 12 midnight so that we can be able to manage all the volumes as the people exit. The other thing that we've done, Stephen, is to add additional capacity in terms of human resources on the ground to make sure that we are able to do access control, law enforcement, but also capacitate our immigration specialists to be able to manage the people as they exit the country in particular. So those are some of the issues that we are doing. But of course, we are also putting all other measures to be able to handle the volumes themselves.
Do you think there are going to be more people trying to cross the border illegally at this time of year than there normally is? I mean, it's busy at the legal ports that you operate. Is it going to be busier illegally as well?
Yeah, you see, Stephen, as it is always the case, when there is high volumes of people, there is always an increase in the volume of those who will try to exit the country illegally or even try to come back into the country illegally. We are definitely anticipating those, hence even our deployments are going to be handling those particular realities. Firstly, we are to intensify our access control into the ports through the additional border guards that we are bringing in. 400 is going to be deployed across the key high-volume-based ports, as it were. And additional to that, we have also capacitated those that will be deployed at the vulnerable segments, working together with the SANDF just outside the port to handle those that will try to go to the borderline and try to enter the country illegally.
Okay, but I mean, 400 guards, I realize that you're bringing them on. It's busy time, it makes sense. But, I mean, it's a long border. I don't need to tell you that. You're the commissioner of the Border Management Agency. The fact is you won't be able to secure it properly over this time. And I mean, that's an unfortunate fact of life, isn't it?
Stephen, it is very much true. I mean, we talk about over 4,000 in terms of land borders, as it were, and we talk about almost 4,000 again in terms of the coastline. So it is indeed very, very wide. But one thing that is a fact, Stephen, is over and above that, we do know the critical areas where people will always try to enter the country illegally. Hence, we have identified those areas. We call them the vulnerable segments, and we do static deployments in those particular areas together with the SANDF as well as the border guards to deal with those realities. One of the things, Stephen, is people will always be taking chances in entering the country illegally around the ports because they will still need to get back into the main corridor and be able to get transportation. So on that particular basis, the borderline is very wide, but of course the areas of concern become highly targeted and highly known, as it were.
Dr. Mike Masiapato, thank you. Commissioner for the Border Management Authority. You were there, SAFM. It's 8 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Bit of a style-up around Galuli's interchange. A couple of incidents. One on the N3 North, a stationary vehicle just after Galuli, so that's messing up the whole sort of interchange area. And then a crash just after Linksfield Road, further up on the N3 North. So the N3 coming through from Bedfordview, Germiston under pressure. The N12 and R24 routes feeding into the N3 North via Galuli's, very slow as well. The Mike 1's quite heavy this morning from Gold Reef City all the way through to Empire Road. R21 towards the airport starting to slow down and look quite heavy this morning as the volume hits the lane restriction section approaching Olifantsfontein. That queue is just going to continue building over the next couple of hours. The N1 South coming out of Pretoria, a breakdown before you get to the R21, so slow from Gautfontein, and then another breakdown on the N1 South just before the old Joburg Road exit, so some queues reading through the Brockfontein interchange. Durban's M7 on your way to the Bluff, that's starting to build up down to Bel Air and Wakesley. Higginson Highway out towards Mobeni Heights, leaving Chatsworth quite heavy this morning. Cape Town not a bad start. There's a bit of traffic, though, unusual for this time of year. Marine Drive, it was a clear run yesterday, but not today. Traffic queuing from Bayside heading down towards the second set of lights at the Sunset Beach area. And just a reminder, if you're travelling in there a little bit, popular destination these days with school holidays and Easter ahead, the N2 between Albertinia and Mossel Bay has a couple of sets of stop-go control, so a couple of waiting periods to get through. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Big stories of the day. #SAFM Sunrise.
7 minutes to 7 the time. Good morning. The African Transformation Movement held a rally in Joburg over the weekend to discuss its manifesto after launching its election manifesto before the election was proclaimed. In fact, I think they launched it last year. The party says it would bring back the death penalty and that it would tell police officers that when it came to criminals, they should shoot to kill. Zama Ntshona is the national spokesperson for the African Transformation Movement. Zama, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen, and the listeners.
What are the main points of your manifesto?
Well, the African Transformation Movement is a values-based political party, and we believe that we do not lack people who are educated in this country to lead it. We do not lack struggle credentials. We lack values. The leaders of this country do not know when to stop, do not know what is not theirs. And the leadership of the African Transformation Movement would start from that point of departure, a values-driven type of leadership. Secondly, truly so, a referendum on the death penalty, the president raised it shortly. Now, it is not just a referendum, but it is a quest to deal with criminality in general. That starts with increasing the ratio of police to citizens. And not only that, specialization when it comes to policing. Because one of the biggest problems is that you have the poor rate or the poor police in this country are poor when it comes to investigation. And if you investigate poorly, you are going to have fewer judgments. And the issue of the referendum on the death penalty is on heinous crimes and repeat offenders. For instance, the killer of Uyinene Mkhwejana was a second-time offender of the same crime. Now, in a government of the African Transformation Movement, it simply means that individual cannot be rehabilitated, refuses to be rehabilitated, even if the justice system was wrong the first time around and that individual was given a life sentence. But when you come back after rehabilitation and you offend in the same way, then it means that you are not a peace-loving individual. We're calling for a referendum on that. We will deal with ESCOM and all state-owned enterprises and make sure that the economy is functional and ring-fence the microeconomic space.
Okay, Zama, you know it's my job to argue with you, right? You say that you want to have a referendum, and in your answer, without any prompting, you conceded the justice system can be wrong when you said even if it was wrong the first time. So if a justice system can be wrong, could we really implement a death penalty when you've already conceded it could be wrong?
How unlucky are you that you would be framed for the same type of crime after 25 years? Now you are back. So after a life sentence you were given, benefit of the doubt the first time because of the inequalities and inefficiency of the justice system. But you come back again and be framed for the same crime. But the African Transformation Movement...
But I'm asking a slightly bigger point, which is that the justice system can make mistakes. We've seen this, by the way, with our justice system from time to time, very rarely. We've seen it in other jurisdictions. I mean, the United States has the death penalty, and they've been making mistakes, and we know this now. So it's one of the strong arguments against a death penalty is that no matter which system you have, it can make mistakes.
But this is why we're saying... death penalty for second-time offenders of the same crime.
Okay.
We are not, because we are looking at those inefficiencies. This is why I'm saying, how unlucky are you in your lifetime that you will be wrongfully prosecuted and for the same crime twice.
Okay.
So this is why we have made that provision. But over and above that, we're saying once a verdict of a death penalty on you, the state must fund your appeal, your right to the Constitutional Court. Because we want, to the best of our ability, to to give you a fair chance to be represented. But in the event that the Constitutional Court finds consistent with the lower courts, then we say you are a second-time offender. You can't claim a right to life when you intentionally took the right to life of another.
Okay. There are lots we could continue the argument, Zama, but there are other issues I do want to bring up. How would you grow the economy, and particularly youth unemployment, which is probably the biggest long-term problem we have?
Thank you so much. One of the biggest challenges of the African transformation movement we have seen is the mismatch between the education system and the economic ideals, future economic ideals of the country. These have given birth to unemployed graduates who are not absorbable, so to speak, to the economy because of the skills mismatch. So one of the things we're going to do is to decide on an economic path. Once you decide on that, you look at the education of the country, see to it that there is proper alignment between the two, so that whatever you produce in the system must be absorbable. For instance, there is an issue right now of food that is low-grade food that is sold in our country, especially in the spaza shop area. We had unemployed graduates who have done environmental studies, but for some reason they are not absorbable because for some reason we think that should not be a priority. In the government of the African Transformation Movement, the issue of security, ingesting food that is poisonous, food that has expired, is going to be one of the things that we're going to look using now from the skills base that is already available. So sometimes it's a question of prioritization, sometimes it's a question of alignment between the ideals of the economy. But also we speak to issue of the ring-fencing of the microeconomic space, so that it is a low-hanging fruit, especially for South Africans who at times have not gone too far as academic studies are concerned. You find that we have had an influx of our brothers and sisters from elsewhere in the country who we welcome to come in the country only in alignment with the rules of this country, immigration laws. Now, yes.
I'm sorry, Zama, we are out of time. Thank you very much indeed, Zama and Shona, the national spokesperson of the African Transformation Movement. You were there, SFM, leading the conversation just after 7 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SFM News.
And top stories this hour: problems in IEC's list of party and independent candidates, and American rapper Sean Diddy Combs' properties raided. Good morning. And in election-related news, the Electoral Commission says 42 candidates appeared on more than one party list. It has implicated 39 parties in the problem. One candidate was nominated as an independent and also appeared on a list of a party. The Commission revealed this after yesterday's 5 p.m. deadline expired. Political parties had until yesterday to inform the Commission if they had nominated candidates who also appeared on the list of other party or who were nominated as independent candidates. The public may now inspect the list of party and independent candidates. They will be available at the Commission's national, provincial and municipal offices between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. today and tomorrow. The High Court in Johannesburg is today expected to deliver judgment in the matter between the ANC and the Electoral Commission. The ANC is challenging the Commission's registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe party, arguing that it is unlawful. The MK party, which the former President Jacob Zuma has endorsed, has submitted that the ANC has not followed internal electoral processes in seeking to have the registration of the party reviewed. The Commission says the ANC failed to object to the registration in time. The judgment was expected to be delivered in the Electoral Court in Bloemfontein yesterday. The Special Tribunal has ordered software giant SAP to pay the Special Investigating Unit, the SIU, 500 million rand within 7 days of corrupt contracts at Eskom. The SIU says the fine originates from 2 contracts that SAP entered into with the power utility between 2013 and 2016. The SIU spokesperson, Kaiser Kganyago, says after SAP secured a deal to provide Eskom with software licenses and support, it paid millions of rands to a company linked to the Gupta family.
The order of the Special Tribunal is part of the implementation of the SIU investigation outcome and consequence management to recover financial losses suffered by the state institution due to negligence or corruption. The settlement does not absolve SAP or any implicated party from possible prosecution. The SIU investigation found that Eskom entered into an enabling agreement contract with SAP for licenses, maintenance and support and ad hoc services at the contract value of over R1 billion. Thereafter, SAP entered into a sale commission agreement with CAD House CC, a Gupta-linked company.
And moving further afield, the United States has called for an immediate surge in desperately needed aid to Gaza in the wake of the first UN Security Council vote in favor of a ceasefire. Meanwhile, at talks in Washington, the Secretary of State Antony Blinken has warned the Israeli Defense Ministry against any ground offensive in Rafah. The BBC's John Sidworth has the details.
This time, for the first time, none of the 5 permanent Security Council members used their power of veto. Instead, the US only abstained. After multiple failed attempts, a resolution calling for an immediate ceasefire was finally passed. Israel responded with anger. While the resolution does call for the release of hostages, it argues that should be made a prior condition for any ceasefire. Palestine's representative at the UN, on the other hand, welcomed the vote.
And U.S. federal agents have raided properties belonging to the American rapper Sean Diddy Combs in Los Angeles and Miami. The Department of Homeland Security says this is part of a federal investigation into sex trafficking. The BBC's David Willis has the details.
Details of the search warrant haven't been released, but it is being reported here that this was all part of a federal sex trafficking investigation, although there's no word on whether Sean Combs himself is the target of that investigation. His whereabouts are currently unknown, but there are unconfirmed reports that federal agents in Florida seized his phones shortly before he was due to leave for a trip to the Caribbean.
And recapping our top story this hour, the Electoral Commission says 42 candidates appear on more than one party list. It has implicated 39 parties in the problem. The Commission revealed this after yesterday's 5 p.m. deadline, which expired yesterday. Headlines at the bottom of the hour. For SFM News, I'm Nomalizo Mandela.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports Headlines, soccer reports hinting that this could be the last game on the horizon for Bafana coach Hugo Broos. They take on Algeria tonight. And more soccer, Pitso Mosimane to receive a prestigious recognition. We'll bring you the details just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Heavy coming out of Pretoria this morning. You've got a breakdown just after Rigel Avenue on the M1 South. That's pushing traffic back to Linwood. So the M1 coming out of Pretoria quite heavy there. And then a breakdown, stationary tanker in the middle lane of the M1 around Old Joburg Road. So that's another queue coming through from the Brockfontein interchange. And of course the R21 queuing out of Pretoria towards the airport as you approach Olifantsfontein in the lane restriction section. That queue continues to grow and will do over the next hour or so. Make sure you've got extra time to get through it and to get to those flights on time. Giluli is a mess. There's a crash coming in on the N12 and R24 routes before Giluli, so that's heavy on both of those routes. And then collision up by Linksfield Road through to Modderfontein on the N3 North. And there's a breakdown as well in that area, so heavy from Germiston through Edenvale. And a collision near the Empire Road off-ramp on the Mike 1 North. So big traffic coming up through the Crown interchange area. Durban's M7 towards the Bluff, queuing down to Bel Air, Wakesley, Higginson Highway out of Chatsworth. Pretty heavy this morning towards the Haven side area. And Cape Town Marine Drive, it was a clear run yesterday. If you you're hoping for a repeat of that. Not so fortunate today. Marine Drive backlogging from Bayside through to the second set of traffic lights at Sunset Beach. At the N7 looking heavy from Vangate Mall up through the Beaufort Circle in Epping, passing the Lunga area. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
8 after 7, good morning. You with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. We've just had confirmation now that the attorney for the National Assembly Speaker, Nosivuma Ngakula, Stephen May, has agreed to talk to you this morning. He's already on hold. You'll hear from him in just a moment. The arguments coming from the Speaker in court yesterday. We'll update you on that. We get a legal view on it as well. Also, AfriForum, they've won a court ruling that says Eskom has to hand over contracts and details of contracts around coal supplies, the electricity that we export to other countries, all of that sort of thing. We'll find out more about that. Your mediated conversation from 8:30 this morning, how the country, how your life is going to change because of climate change. That's coming up from 8:30 this morning. Good morning. It's a busy morning. It's Tuesday.
So, you've reached a T-junction on the road. You can go left or right. Within 32 days after receiving an RTO traffic fine, you can pay the fine and get a 50% discount. Pay in installments, nominate the driver responsible, make a representation, or elect to be tried in court. To learn more about the Administrative Adjudication of Road Traffic Offences Act and your rights and options as a motorist, go to rtia.co.za. Change the way South Africa drives. RTIA, giving you peace of mind on the road.
ES Tunis plan to disallow their visitors any breathing moment, but ASEC Mimosas remain extremely hungry for maximum points on the road. The North takes on the West. This is the first leg quarter-final battle of the CAF Champions League. Witness Africa's beautiful game. ES Tunis versus ASEC Mimosas on Saturday 30 March at 11 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
10 after 7, good morning. Well, in the High Court in Tshwane yesterday, the NPA confirming it's planning to arrest the Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosivuma Ngakula. It also said in court papers it published a list of payments when the NPA says he received money that was actually bribes. Mapisa Ngakula is accused of taking 4 million rand from a defence contractor in return for contracts with the SANDF while she was the Minister of Defence. She's denied wrongdoing. The NPA said in court yesterday it would not arrest her ahead of a ruling in the case in her application on Tuesday next week. She had brought the application asking the court to stop the NPA from arresting her, claiming that her rights had been abused. Her attorney is Stephen May. He joins you now. Stephen, good morning.
Good morning.
Why do you believe your client has been treated unfairly?
Well, to start, we engaged with the NPA's representatives to try and arrange a date when my client could just hand herself over. So obviously, you need to consider my diary. I'm in Durban at the moment for another trial. And initially, they seemed unwilling to negotiate a reasonable, sober sort of process that would allow that. And then the very next day, there was a search and seizure that was executed on my client's residence. And the continuous threats of arrest persisted. So in light of that, and in light of my unavailability, we brought an application that was served on the NPA during the course of last week.
As I understand the NPA's argument, you're not the only attorney in your firm. I know that you're the sort of main attorney, and she's obviously your client. But do you actually yourself have to be there when she would be arrested? There are other attorneys in your firm, goes the argument. Could they not have been there instead? It's a very quick procedure. I mean, she would probably have been released within the hour.
Well, firstly, the first thing is probably, and it's cold comfort to say probably released within the hour because it's not a foregone conclusion. The second thing is that whatever the case is, she would have been arrested, she would have been brought into the dock, and that in and of itself comes with a diminution of her rights. Now, the right to choose one's legal representative is enshrined in the Constitution, and even pre-constitutional law recognizes the right to choose one's representative. Yes, there are other people in my firm, but they're not my client's chosen representative. So whoever that would, whoever was available to go, isn't the one who she's decided on, isn't the most senior person, isn't the person with the expertise that she's decided that she wants to represent her on the day.
So I can understand that, and obviously you're correct. The Constitution says that you have a right to choose who will represent you in court. But you don't always have a right to choose when you're going to be arrested. And in this case, as I understand it, the police investigator got in touch with her and basically said, this is what we're going to do, and things went from there. The sort of advice was that she get a lawyer. That's what she did. She obviously contacted you. I don't know if you worked for her before or not. What I'm trying to get to is, the NPA could probably have gone ahead and just arrested her if they had a warrant, if everything was legally correct, without telling her in advance. And I don't know if that would have been breaking anyone's rights. I mean, that's what usually happens, actually, is that someone is arrested with no warning.
It unfortunately is what usually happens, and it's a great pity, and it's an affront to the Constitution, because, well, let me start here. You mentioned a warrant. In fact, the threat was to arrest her in terms of Section 40 of the Criminal Procedure Act. And that is arrest without a warrant. And it's typically, or not typically, but ought to be the exception that a person is arrested without a warrant. In fact, even when seeking a warrant, one has to show or satisfy the presiding officer from whom you're seeking the warrant that A, there's a reasonable suspicion of a crime, but B, that there aren't any other less drastic forms of bringing a person to court. The Criminal Procedure Act also makes provision for being summoned to court or being warned to appear in court. And these should be the methods of securing a person's attendance at court if they're not a flight risk. And certainly my client is not a flight risk.
Okay. So for you, it's all about the timing. I mean, the arrest, it seems now, is inevitable. It's just the timing of the arrest.
Well, it's not just the timing. There are further issues in and amongst all of this. I mentioned just now that that the moment one appears in the dock, and this was amply ventilated when in the private prosecutions of the president, as well as Karen Maughan and Billy Downer, where being brought into a dock comes with humiliation, often a media storm around, especially if one is someone in the public eye, and a loss of reputation and dignity and self-esteem. Now, if there isn't a good enough case to actually answer, and there isn't actually something that's worth going to trial over, in other words, and the test here is a case where the state has good prospects of securing a conviction. In other words, they have evidence in their docket which is admissible, credible, and likely to convict a person. They shouldn't enroll and the matter and drag a person into the dock at all, exactly because of the diminution of reputation, dignity, and even the freedom while you're standing in the dock, and the threat of the loss of freedom during all of the postponements while you go about unpicking the weak state case. Now, if the state does have a very weak case, they shouldn't be enrolling, and that is our view here, that the state's case is actually so weak that they ought not to enroll. And if they are intent on enrolling, they ought not to arrest, because the weakness of a state case would militate very strongly against my client ever being a flight risk.
Okay, I'm not concerned about the flight risk argument. I agree. I don't think anyone can really assume that she is a flight risk. But you say that the state has a weak case, but you're also asking for details about the case. So how do you know that it's a weak case when you don't have all the details?
Well, what's been published in the media, can only really have come from the state, because they're the only ones in possession of it. But it appears what has been published in the media is that the state's case rests on a Section 204 witness who herself was being prosecuted, and around the same time that her Section 204 statement was taken, had her prosecution either withdrawn or struck from the roll. So the inference from that would be that the withdrawal or striking was a consideration or quid pro quo for the statement that she gave, which obviously raises credibility issues, and amongst the other evidential cautionary rules that accompany such a witness, including being a single witness. So in light of all of that, it's very difficult to contemplate that a conviction would follow, especially when one considers there's really only her oral evidence and say so that certain payments were made.
Okay. I mean, I presume that the trial will have to deal with that. Your team said in court yesterday that you believe your phone conversations were being listened to. What evidence do you have of that?
There were two incidents. My baby was born last week, and I hadn't told that to anybody. Certainly not in the state representative's camp, so to speak. And very shortly after I arrived at the hospital, during the course of the day that followed, I got a call from one of them, and they mentioned that they knew that my wife had given birth, and that they knew that I was that had happened. The second thing was, initially, you would have seen from the proceedings that were televised yesterday that counsel on brief was Advocate Willis. He and I were the legal team at a stage, and I had suggested to him over a private telephone call that a further counsel be added with specialist criminal knowledge, in particular on disclosure. That is Advocate Graham Kerr-Phillips. And very shortly after, it became public, or there was a further telephone call which also indicated that there was a knowledge when that also had not been publicized at all, and it had the only discussion had been a privileged telephone discussion between Advocate Willis and myself.
Okay. In the NPA's papers, they say, and I'll sort of quote from it, the colleague disclosed to the team that the applicant's legal representative, I presume that's you, was unable to come on his own to the site since his wife had recently given birth. They then go on to say this deals with the allegation by the applicant's legal representative that his communication is being intercepted, which is not true. So, I mean, they've denied it under oath.
Yeah, they've also got a witness who says certain things under oath. It doesn't mean that we give full credence to everything that's said.
Stephen May, thank you very much indeed for agreeing to speak to us at short notice. I do appreciate it. The attorney representing the National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula. It's 21 minutes after 7. Well, let's get another view on this. Benedict Piri is a lawyer, well-known legal expert. Benedict, good morning to you. We see this application. The Speaker claims the NPA wants to abuse her rights. The NPA says it's following normal procedure. From what you've heard, from what you've read, do you believe she has a case? Benedict Piri, I think you might have muted yourself. Good morning. Are you with us? Benedict Piri? All right, we seem to have...
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning, Stephen.
Sorry
Good morning
that.
to the listeners. I had muted while I was listening to Stephen May. Apologies for that. And I'd forgot to unmute myself. I think certainly from what I've heard and seen and, what we observed yesterday, I think what the Speaker is trying to do is actually quite extraordinary because, these are not rights that are afforded in this particular kind of instance. It's extraordinary to avoid an arrest on the grounds that she's avoiding because, the Criminal Procedure Act is quite clear that a person may be arrested whether on a warrant or not. And she's certainly not challenging the question of whether she should be arrested on a warrant or not. The question is whether, when she should make her way to court and when she should appear. And that seems to turn on the legal representative's unavailability rather than any aspects or factors that impinge on her ability to be in court. And we hear from Stephen May that it's a right in the Constitution to choose the specific legal representative. But certainly when I see that right in the Constitution, and given the stage of proceedings, I don't think it's a right that is afforded to Mapisa Ngakula or anyone else to choose a specific legal representative. And if there were arrangements that had been made with the NPA for her to appear in the manner that she would have done, and the bail not being opposed, certainly that should have been how proceedings should have transpired, and that wouldn't have been a violation of her rights.
If the judge rules next Tuesday and turns down her application, would that mean the NPA could go ahead and arrest her immediately?
Certainly, it could mean it could go ahead and arrest her immediately. But I think what is always preferable is to make arrangements with the person who's to be arrested and subsequently will be the accused for the manner in which they will be processed at the police station, and then certainly in this case for the bail application to be heard, and then the subsequent release, and the judge would or the magistrate would obviously say when the case would proceed thereafter.
The 4 million rand. So she's accused of 4 million rand of. Let me start again. She's accused of receiving 4 million rand from a contractor. Yesterday, the NPA, as I pointed out, published the sort of times, the dates when these payments were allegedly made, and the locations at which they were made. And Stephen May says that this information comes only from this contractor, who we understand, although there's still no official clarity as far as I know, but we understand she's turned state witness. And the point is that Stephen May makes is that she is the only witness against Nosavu Mapisa Ngakula, and she's turned state witness because she was being charged. Now, she's clearly testifying against the speaker. How important is that? I mean, a defense lawyer, I presume, would be able to use that against the witness under cross-examination, and if it's the only witness, if there's a single witness, how complicated could a prosecution be here?
Yeah, it is important that she's the only witness because there are rules around how you treat the evidence of an only witness, in this particular instance, somebody who was co-accused in the matter. So that is an important consideration. But, we mustn't lose sight of the fact that there is other evidence that can corroborate the evidence of the single witness. So there would be proofs of payments, there would be, in some instances, these cash that was withdrawn and delivered at Mapisa Ngakula's house. There would be, evidence of when it was withdrawn. So there is other pieces of evidence that, and this is why the search and seizure had to occur, because I believe, the state was looking for the wig, for instance, that was given at some particular instance, and a few other items that could objectively stand to support the case of this individual witness. And I mean, it's still early days now, but it's not the time yet to question whether that evidence will actually stand up to scrutiny. And certainly in the ordinary course of the criminal trial, Mapisa Ngakula would have the ability to examine that witness, as well as question some of the other evidence that would be brought in support of her statement or testimony.
And I presume it could also hinge on whether there's, did the person driving to the locations where these payments were allegedly made use a GPS? Is there a record on Google or something? And then also cross-examination would be key. This would be one of those trials where the cross-examination of both the witness and the accused would be absolutely vital.
Absolutely. And we mustn't forget that an accused is entitled to a Section 194 discharge if after the state's case it appears that the state hasn't proved its case. So, if that is the case, that the single witness would not have brought any evidence and the state would not have any further evidence that would basically show, if Mapisa Ngakula said nothing else, that she would be guilty of a crime, she would be entitled to bring that application to say that, the case should end there because the state hasn't proven her case, and she wouldn't even need to go into the dock to give any evidence.
Benedict Perry, really appreciate the time, lawyer and legal expert. Thank you. 27 minutes after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. What's the story around Hugo Broos?
Oh, Stephen, this rumor mill is churning faster than a minibus taxi at rush hour. But it's reports that are coming from Tunisia that's holding rank. Apparently, Coach Bruges is in advanced talks to take over as Tunisia's head coach. But in the meantime, let's not forget that our own Bafana have a bigger fish to fry against Algeria tonight. It is a big game, and especially after they had a 1-1 draw against Andorra, which was deemed an uninspiring display for Bafana. Coach Bruges was satisfied now to offer players a chance, stating that there will be no experimenting against Algeria tonight, 11 p.m. live on SABC1. They'll face off at the Nelson Mandela Stadium at 11 p.m. We've also got Bronwyn Williams, the Bafana captain, saying he's defending Coach Hugo Bruges.
Tomorrow's game, obviously, it's going to be a big one. We're playing the host nation. We know they come off a very bad AFCON. They've just gotten a new coach, and that can be very dangerous. Because players want to obviously put their hand up. They want to show. They want to be counted. So we've trained accordingly. We've been ready. We want to show why we finished number 3 at AFCON, and we want that consistency in our performances.
Staying in the world of football, Pitso Mosimane, the master tactician behind Mamelodi Sundowns' success and now shining in the Middle East with ABBA FC, is set to receive an honorary doctorate from the University of Johannesburg, celebrated for his groundbreaking achievements in African as well as international football. Dr. Mosimane has won a staggering 19 major trophies and has been a beacon of excellence and inspiration. Elsewhere, international football star Dani Alves was conditionally released from jail after he paid bail of €1 million. Alves was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison last month after a court found him guilty of raping a woman in a Barcelona nightclub in 2022. Now, the court in Spain gave the former Barcelona and Brazil footballer permission to leave jail pending his appeal after he made the stated bail. The 40-year-old has been held in pre-trial detention since January 2023. Tennis action now. Italy's Lorenzo Musetti beat Ben Shelton of the United States 6-4, 7-6 to reach the 4th round of the Miami Open. The 23rd seed Musetti advances to face the tournament top-ranked and world number 2 Carlos Alcaraz of Spain next. Now, Shelton's exit means no American men will make the final 16 in Miami. Now, Carlos Alcaraz easing through. He beat Frenchman Guy Monfils 6-2, 6-4. That's where we leave it for now on Sunrise. We'll have more sport. Top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. You with SFM leading the conversation. We'll talk more about the Gauteng hospitals and their telephone lines in the next little while. No load shedding now. Stage 2 later, 7:30.
And in the headlines, the organization Judges Matter, which monitors the judiciary in South Africa, says it hopes the High Court in Johannesburg will today explain why it did not deliver judgment in the case between the ANC and the Electoral Commission yesterday. The Electoral Court in Bloemfontein was supposed to deliver judgment, but the chairman, Delisile Nhlapo, informed the affected parties that there were some delays that the court was dealing with. In other news, the Electoral Commission says 42 candidates appeared on more than one party list. It has implicated 39 parties in the problem. One candidate was nominated as an independent and also appeared on a list of a party. The Commission revealed this after yesterday's 5 p.m. deadline expired. And police authorities in the Northwest have commended their officers for arresting several people suspected of kidnapping 2 cousins while on their way to school in Hartbeespoort Dam earlier this month. More on these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's a pretty heavy mess out of Pretoria, either to the airport or to Joburg via Midrand this morning. There's a lot going on. There's a crash on the M1 South just after Atterbury. That's pushing traffic all the way back through towards the N4 Emelathleni Highway. So that's heavy down towards a point just after Atterbury. And then once you emerge from that, there's a breakdown just after Rigel. And then as you sort of get out of all of that, there's a broken down tanker on the M1 South further down at Old Joburg Road. And there's just been a crash between New Road and Allendale. So that's really a joined-up queue from Brockfontein all the way through Midrand towards Allendale. And, of course, if you come off that N1 south at the R21 and head towards the airport, you've got the roadworks, which are queuing quite heavily down towards Clayville. Also, crash on the M1 north before Bayers Nordia. So, effectively, from 14th Avenue, there's traffic all the way past that up to Rivonia Road. The N12 and R24 routes with a crash at Galuli's, both heavy coming in from the Ekurhuleni side. Durban, the Higginson Highway down to Haven side, that's really busy this morning. The traffic light issue at the Phoenix Highway Trade Centre looks to be sorted. It was a mess yesterday. It's not too bad. If anything, it's a little bit lighter getting through the Phoenix Trade Centre area this morning. And Cape Town, the reason for Marine Drive being so heavily backed up, it is a set of traffic lights down. The second lights at Sunset Beach, which come from Tableview, not operational this morning. That traffic's back through to Bayside Mall territory. There's a broken down vehicle on the bus and taxi lane coming in on the N2 just after Jake Skerveld, so in front of Langa, that right lane closed. Watch of some traffic moving out of that lane into the middle of the carriageway and slowing things in from the airport. The M5's worth a mention as well, quite heavy from Rondebosch up towards Kubo. Get a change. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Ray Machlaka, good morning again. Asian markets, US markets, how are they looking?
Well, it is still US markets that are up and leading with gains. The investor focus is on the US economy and interest rates. Investors still expect the US Central Bank to cut interest rates 3 times this year, and later in the week, inflation data in the US will be released, and that will give clues about the outlook for interest rates. Before the US market opens later today, the US futures market is up. NASDAQ, Dow Jones and S&P futures are each up 0.1%. In Asian markets, Hong Kong's Hang Seng is up 0.2%. China's Shanghai Composite is down 0.4%, and Hong Kong's Japan's Nikkei is also down 0.1%, and the local market, the JSE, was up 0.1% yesterday. The shares of mining and telecommunications companies were mostly up.
And MTN, it spent 10 billion rand last year to make its network resilient with load shedding.
Yeah, last year, MTN spent 10.1 billion rand to improve its telecommunications network in South Africa. Of the 10 billion rand that MTN spent, about 3 billion rand went into measures that made its telecommunications network more resilient to Eskom blackouts. MTN says its network is now more available and reliable during Eskom blackouts, especially high stages. Over the past year, MTN spent money on backup electricity measures such as solar power. It also bought generators and lithium batteries to keep its cell phone towers running during Eskom blackouts. Cell phone towers are infrastructure that is critical for mobile and internet connectivity. These towers depend on stable electricity supply to function efficiently.
And Eskom wants a huge increase in how much power it can buy from companies.
Yeah, Eskom wants to more than double the electricity it currently procures from private companies. Electricity Minister Josienza Ramokgopa says Eskom has proposed to increase its power procurement from private companies from 1,000 megawatts to 4,000 megawatts. This is aimed at improving Eskom's electricity supply. In 2022, Eskom launched a program to procure excess electricity from existing independent power producers and large industrial companies, but Eskom now wants to boost this program.
Ray Machlaka, thank you. Ray, of course, back tomorrow. More business news through the day here on SFM. 24 minutes now to 8.
Yanga have a massive mission to dish out orders in Dar es Salaam against 2016 champions. However, Masandawana believe in their ability to succeed anywhere on African soil. This is the first leg quarter-final encounter of the CAF Champions League. Witness Africa's beautiful game. Young Africans versus Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday 30 March at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. Rising costs, housing prices, fuel price hikes, diminished consumer buying power, inflation. It's a jungle out there. Who do you trust when the only certainty is uncertainty? You need an investment team who considers it all to give you the advantage. At Prescient Investment Management, we analyze more than 120 million indicators daily because the biggest returns are found in the smallest insights. Discover the future of investing at prescient.co.za. Prescient Investment Management is a registered FSP.
Buying a new TV? You'll need a paid-up TV license. Need to check your balance? No sweat at all. You just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 for fast, effective balance inquiries. Secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
22 minutes now to 8 the time. You know the number 086 000 2032. Lots to talk about this morning. You heard the conversation with the lawyer representing Nosaviwe Mapiso-Nqakula, the Speaker of the National Assembly. Conversations around the Electoral Commission and that registration case of MK. We expect judgment on that. The Electoral Court sitting in Joburg. We expect that decision coming up in the next little while, in a couple of hours from now. In the meantime, a judge in the High Court has ruled that Eskom must hand over details of its contracts with coal suppliers, with people who transport diesel, and with the countries it supplies with the electricity to the group AfriForum. AfriForum had first made an application under the Promotion of Access to Information Act. Eskom opposed it. Now Eskom has to hand over this information to AfriForum within the next week or so. Louis Boshoff is the campaign manager, the campaign officer at AfriForum. Louis, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to our listeners.
What information do you now want from Eskom? What are you expecting them to give you?
So our original bio application contained 4 pieces, or asked for 4 pieces of information, which was one, a list of independent power providers contributing to the national grid. Now that Eskom have provided recently, we haven't studied it yet, but we have received that. And then also a list of other countries or contracts with other countries to whom Eskom is exporting electricity. From that, we received only redacted versions, but with most of the critical information, including names and prices or amounts being redacted or completely crossed out, so we couldn't see it. And then also, as you've mentioned, the diesel and coal contracts, which we haven't received any, not for the procurement or for the distribution of diesel or coal.
Okay, I'm going to come to coal in a moment. Isn't most of the diesel through Petro SA, through another government entity, or is it coming from independent suppliers?
We are not sure. That's part of the problem. We believe most is through Petro SA because we've heard that Petro SA is in fact making a lot of money from this. But before we see the contracts, we can't be sure exactly from whom and at what price.
Okay, and that'll start a big argument about whether they're paying road accident fund duties, for example.
Yes, that might be the case.
Okay, the coal suppliers, what are you specifically interested in there? And I know there have been big changes over the last 10 years to the sort of model where Eskom power stations were built on coal mines with a sort of cost-plus deal. That changed. I think some of it changed back. What information do you need there?
Well, AfriForum will be appointing a panel of experts to review the contracts the moment we receive that. So it's more than that. We're looking for some specific piece of information. We'd rather take a broad look at it and see what we find. But we know it. We know about the export of high quality coal taking place in large amounts each day, and so how that affects, do we keep enough quality coal for local use, and also regarding the transport of coal, whether in fact it is taking place at fair rates.
Okay, there might be issues around transport, but we know we have enough high-quality coal. Yes, high-quality coal's been exported, particularly when coal prices were high, but the Minerals Council has said, as I understand it, and coal miners have said, they have more than enough high-quality coal to export and sell to Eskom. On what basis do you believe we might be selling, in your words, too much high-quality coal to other countries?
Well, I think it's not an issue of whether there is enough coal in the country, but whether the coal is managed properly. And also, so we're not worried about the amount of coal available in the ground or even already mined, but whether there's proper management of that coal in such a way that at a fair price it is procured by Eskom without any mismanagement or malspending or whatever, and while still selling coal at fair prices to other countries.
Okay. The information about electricity Eskom supplies to other countries. I mean, for a long time, we sort of believed that Zimbabwe was kind of dependent on South African electricity. I don't think that's still true, but aren't we a part of a pool of electricity suppliers? So we shouldn't see the electricity system as just South Africa. It's sort of Southern Africa. We might export to this country, but we import from Mozambique. It all sort of moves around, and at different places, your electricity is coming from different places. What information are you looking for? Do you believe we're exporting more power than we import?
Well, I cannot say that we do not have a problem per se with electricity being exported. Imported. It's simply a case of Freeforum asking for transparency so that we know that it is being exported at fair rates and imported as well, so that we know that it is fair deals Eskom are engaging in.
All right, fair enough. Louis Boshoff, thank you. Campaign officer at AfriForum, really appreciate the time. It's 16 minutes now to 8.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, Bond on the line from Cape Town. Bond, what are you doing out of Gqeberha? Good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Let's make a declaration. The way I like your show, I had to search in my phone for the
Cape Town frequency.
Yeah. I've come for my youngest daughter's LLB graduation. At
congratulations.
Yeah. Thanks very much.
Are you happy with her doing law? Are you sure?
She's doing her master's now. She's going beyond, so I'm proud of her. She's going beyond her dad.
Yes.
Yeah, Stephen, I wanted to simplify this thing as follows. Section 38 of the Criminal Procedure Act stipulates 3 methods of securing a person's attendance to court, because the actions of the police about an allegation and a person being taken to court means that they must ensure that this person ends up in court somehow. And there are 3 methods. The first one is arrest. The second one is summons. The third one is notice of an indictment. It says the act is the wording of the act is peremptory or compulsory. It says the person shall be secured, the attendance shall be secured in court shall be secured in one of the 3 ways. It does not say may.
It says will.
It says will. It means there is no discretion there. You must act in any of the 3 ways. What does that mean? It means that the law enforcement that does any of those things is empowered to choose any of them. You cannot interdict an entity from doing what it is empowered by the Criminal Procedure Act to do.
Yeah.
You understand? So it can do any of those. The problem here, if I can simplify it, is the indulgences that have been granted, or ladies or gentlemen agreement, because maybe of health, because of status. Now there's a separate agreement or a separate creation of rights and duties. Come and hand yourself on this date. No, I'm not available. I'm going overseas, or my lawyer is not. That is a separate issue. That is not incorporated in the law. So the crisis that is being created is something that is not supposed to be created. I'm asking myself as I'm here, someone who got bail or ended up in prison is asking, how is Section 9 helping South Africans if someone is treated more equal than me? Why was I not invited to bring my law or come at least or first go to do a traditional ceremony in Transkei before I attend? You see? So at the end of the day, what is at issue here in court is Section 9, the right to equality, which says everyone is equal before the law and they must enjoy equal protection and benefit of the law.
All right, yeah.
So that is the nub of it. And lastly, you cannot ask to get copies of the docket before the matter has been finalized. You see, it's putting the cart before the horse. You can't do that. It's not allowed. You can't. It's premature. You may not be charged. Someone criticized me for saying lastly, because the system of South African criminal procedure or law is that there is no compulsory prosecution. Even if that docket goes to the prosecutor, he or she is not obliged to prosecute. They must establish first, is there a prima facie case on which to proceed? Even if there's a prima facie case, are there compelling reasons why I should not go ahead despite the prima facie case? So it's premature to talk about rights. You cannot claim rights that you're not entitled to. The only rights a suspect can claim is that of human dignity, respect, privacy, as a suspect, not as an accused. Thank you.
No, Bond in Cape Town. Thank you, and Bond, congratulations. Yeah, interesting to see. I was very interested in some of the arguments that have been put forward in this case. Churchill and Mtatala Churchill, how do you see it?
Hey, very strange, Stephen. These developments, you see, sometimes it would seem some are more equal than others. Animal farm. Because in our understanding, unless we don't understand the word, what arrest means, because in our little understanding of the law is that she was simply going to be processed because of the presumption of innocence until proven otherwise. She still has to prove her case in court. I mean, I don't understand why this fast. Why do we even have to go to court? Because they've done the distance of actually, inviting her to come and be processed. Simple as all that. It happens to everybody because we cannot hate it. I mean, at the moment, she's innocent.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm trying to say? Now, why all this? Why all this?
Yeah. All right, Churchill, let's see how it plays out. We'll know next Tuesday. Janusz in Cape Town, hi. It says here you want to talk about Moscow. You talk about the Moscow attack.
That's right, yes. Hi, Stephen. Moscow attack and the 4 Islamists were arrested in some areas. What is strange to me, because, I've got some information, I've got some friends as well, and listening to this carefully, what's happening there. They were arrested there in the places after 4 hours from when you normally drive from Moscow. But what was strange, when you calculate the time and the distance where they were arrested, that contact was on the other side of the city. So they're supposed to travel to the city and to that place about 150 kilometers per hour, which is impossible to go to the city. So everything is, it's doesn't look okay. And of course they were arrested, and now the Ukrainian is blamed for that, for everything. It's the reason I think what happened. I don't know whether they did it or not, because we'll never know. Did you see the faces, how they were treated when they came to the court? So it's not like an interrogation. It was like something more about it, and they will tell whatever they will say. So now
they were clearly tortured, Janusz. I mean, one of them had something covering. One of the press reports put it had a bandage where normally an ear is. We don't know what happened there, but certainly it looked like they'd been tortured or something.
Yes, that's right. And and that there's a cover up, because now Russia will have a reason to call for the more army and stand up against Ukraine. But the another point is, do you know why the Germans attacked Poland, and what was the reason? Maybe you know, but not. I will tell you. The 4 hours before the Germans attacked Poland, they supposed to be the Polish criminals attacked the independent German station in Poland.
Yes.
So it was a good occasion to. So it's very often.
It was a staged provocation, is what you're saying.
That's right. The same like in Russia. Innocent people suffer for some sort of issues.
Yeah. All right, Janusz on the line from Cape Town. Thank you. I've heard that theory that essentially this was something that the Russians did sort of to themselves to try and create a pretext for something. I have to say, as far as I know, there's no evidence of that. So we need to just be quite careful when we say things like that. But I know why people are so cynical about the situation. But still, you need evidence before you say something like that, in my view. 8 minutes to 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Pretty busy Tuesday morning. Might be busier than you're expecting for a school holiday period, but here we go. A breakdown at Galooly. So the N12 at R24, reaching for Ekurhuleni, both heavy. N12 backed up to Craft Road. R24 pushing back through Edenvale. A collision on the M1 North before Bayers Nordia. Quite heavy coming through from 14th Avenue up into that one. And quite heavy traffic into Sandton this morning. William Mandela down through Hurlingham onto Sandton Drive behind that Republic Road, leaving Randburg's quite heavily backed as well. The N1 going south stays slow after a couple of incidents. You're going to sit from Brockfontein down towards New Road. The N1 south leaving Pretoria is heavy. A crash just after Atterbury. Traffic all the way back almost to Stormful Road. That's how heavy that flow is this morning. That's really jam-packed. Now, Durban, another day, another breakdown in the construction between Komashu and Gateway. This one's just before you get to Gateway, and that traffic is heavy. If you're on your way to the airport, coming in from the south coast, you've got two queues on that end. So you've got to sit from the M7 up through Spaghetti Junction into the roadworks, and then from just after Queen Nundy Drive up to that breakdown at Gateway. So make sure you've got plenty of time to get through. Crash on the Higginson Highway now near Haven side. Coming out of Chatsworth stays very busy. Cape Town, not too bad. The traffic flow is just being held on the N1 inbound. There's a lot of traffic between N1 City and the elevated freeway foreshore area. No lights on Marine Drive at Sunset Beach. It's off its worst, but it is slow there. And just another reminder, if you're driving outside Cape Town to and from Mossel Bay, quite a lot of roadworks just east of Swellendam and then just east of Albertinia. Two more sets of stop-go controls to work through. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Yanga have a massive mission to dish out orders in Dar es Salaam against 2016 champions. However, Masandawana believe in their ability to succeed anywhere on African soil. This is the first leg quarter-final encounter of the CAF Champions League. Witness Africa's beautiful game. Young Africans versus Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday, 30 March at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Attention filmmakers, are you ready? It's time to showcase the vibrant tapestry of KZN's cultural heritage at the Simon Mabunu Sobela KZN Film and Television Awards, South Africa's ultimate celebration of cinematic excellence. In partnership with the SABC and KZN EDTA, we champion innovation, paving the way for the future of cinema. This year we go beyond imagination. Edit your 1-minute submissions because a call for entry is now open until the 28th of March 2024. For more information, visit www.kzn.film.co.za or follow us on our social platforms. Join the conversation using hashtag SSA24. KZN Film, our kingdom is your stage.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
5 minutes to 8. Good morning. You heard yesterday from the SA Medical Association that the telephone lines for the main hospitals in Gauteng, Chris Hani Baragwanath Hospital, Charlotte Macrae Hospital, others, are not working because the Gauteng Health Department hasn't paid its Telkom bill. This means people can't phone hospitals. I presume people in the hospitals can't phone out. Motala Tala Mudiba is the spokesperson for the Gauteng Health Department. Motala Tala, good morning.
Morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Are your landline telephone lines at these major hospitals working?
We still have, I think, it's Steve Biko and Charlotte Macrae, whose lines are still not working. The feedback we got from Telkom yesterday was that they have restored all the lines, but you have lines that have developed other issues other than the issue of the payment, because the payment issue has been settled. So they reported that there were some lines where they picked up technical issues. In some lines, they need to replace cables. I know that in Carltonville, they reported that the cable there had been stolen, so they've ordered a new cable for them to be able to replace that cable. So we're now dealing with they're dealing with some of the technical issues along those lines to bring them back on.
Okay, how much money do you owe Telkom at the moment?
No, we've paid them. We don't owe them anything. We owed them about 4.2 million. They've been paid, so we're not owing them at the moment.
Why didn't you pay them the money when you were supposed to pay them?
There was a dispute in relation to the issue of the bill that they had sent through, where we disputed some of the items that were on that bill. That dispute still stands. Because there are some items in their bill that are of facilities that are not under the portfolio of the Gauteng Department of Health, and we had wanted those to be obviously removed from the bill so that we were then able to settle the what is due to them. So we then ended up agreeing that we will pay, and then obviously we will then continue engaging with them so that the lines that are questionable, that are not part of our portfolio, should be removed from our system.
So I just want to understand this. Telkom, I mean, did this happen out of nowhere? They suddenly started billing you for facilities that weren't yours, so you were paying for numbers that don't belong to you. That seems unlikely, I'm afraid.
It didn't happen out of nowhere. Remember that these things, they do happen along the journey in terms of when you from time to time get your billing. But I mean, the team was able to pick this up now. Say because every time when we get the bill, it gets scrutinized in terms of what are you being invoiced for, and that's why you are able to pick things like this. If you look at your bill, every time you get your bills, you are able to pick up discrepancies, and it does happen. It's not an anomaly for you to get a bill for in a particular month where you're seeing things that you're not used to seeing on your bill, and then you start questioning that. It's not. I don't think that's something that is an anomaly. It happens even in our own. I mean, myself, I've had issues with Tshwane Municipality where, in a particular month, I see items on my billing that I don't know.
Okay,
yes.
Sure.
And then you have to clear it.
So it does happen with electricity. It does happen with water. Telephone billing is slightly different because you can know where the call came from, and there's usually some form of evidence. And Telkom must have believed that they were in the right, because they went so far as to switch off some of the major hospitals in Gauteng. I don't think they would have done that if they didn't believe they were right.
No, it's not about believing that they were right. If they would believe that they were right, why then would we agree that let's settle, and then we then can go through the other items and so forth? They applied a principle that says you pay, then we engage afterwards and so forth. I mean, it's their own sort of policy or approach, and they are the one who are providing the service. So it doesn't mean that because we agreed to pay, then what you are saying is that we should have then continuously have a protracted engagement, where I think it's where we are now. It's maybe a better decision to have paid, and then we continue to engage around some of those items.
Well, Tala, I want to believe you, but the fact is that the Gauteng Health Department has a long track record of showing that it can't manage money. It's always in financial problems. I realize you have a high patient load. I get that. But just recently, City Power threatened to switch off 2 of your hospitals because they said you hadn't paid your electricity bill. So when you look at the track record of the Gauteng Health Department, I know you paid it in the end, but I'm saying if you look at the track record of the Gauteng Health Department, can you see why it's difficult to believe you rather than Telkom? I mean, do you understand that problem?
But Stephen, even with City Power, you'd recall that around the issue that related to Charlotte Maxeke, where there is a TMI building and so forth, you would know that the reason why we disputed that is because it's not Gauteng Health that is occupying that particular facility. It's multiple other people. But because, and it's an agreement that we've had with them for quite some time, say every person who's in that compound must have their own meter. Why are we having only 1 meter? And that 1 meter is registered in the name of the Gauteng Department of Health. But you've got several other institutions in the same facility who should be ideally paying for their own consumption. And that's where the bone of contention is. So you are saying to me that we must just agree, simply because there is a history, we must then stop questioning where creditors come and say, just pay us, and then we'll talk later. But at the same time, you are saying we must account for the very same amounts. I suppose maybe you are right in that there is a history, but you can't now, when you are reversing and correcting that history, say you should not be doing that. You should be actually just be paying, because that's what we're being asked to do now. And we will not allow a situation where simply because of maybe we've had issues in the past, when we are correcting them now, suddenly we must then fall back on the history and say, no, don't question. We questioned, we challenged that, and we were able to find each other because remember that we've got new leadership that is at the helm. We've got people that have come in that are now looking at many of these things. But this is wrong. You have not been doing it correctly. This is how it should be done. Sure. When you do that, there would be a pushback, obviously, in some instances. And we didn't anticipate that correcting the wrongs would just be a simple, smooth highway. There would be areas where you find a pushback and a resistance, because maybe people are used to the department just paying.
All right, we've heard you. Thank you. Do appreciate the time. Matala Madibe is the Gauteng Health Department spokesperson with SAFM leading the conversation just after 8 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
In top stories this hour, more on the expected ruling in the ANC versus IEC matter, and Pandor welcomes UN Security Council vote. Good morning. And in election-related news, the organization Judges Matter, which monitors the judiciary in South Africa, says it hopes the High Court in Johannesburg will today explain why it did not deliver judgment in the case between the ANC and the Electoral Commission yesterday. The Electoral Court in Bloemfontein was supposed to deliver judgment, but the chairman, Delisile Ntapo, informed the affected parties that there were some delays that the court was dealing with. The ANC is challenging the Commission's registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, arguing that it is unlawful. The organization's researcher Mbegezeli Benjamin says they are looking forward to the judgment.
And I'm hoping that they will also explain why it took an extra day, because, like I said, judgments are usually handed down or written within a period of 3 months. So to reduce that period into 3 days is quite a huge task. And so I'm hoping they'll explain to us why they needed an extra day in addition to the 3 days in which they took to write the judgment.
The Electoral Commission says 42 candidates appeared on more than one party list. The Commission has implicated 39 parties in the problem. It revealed this after yesterday's 5 p.m. deadline expired. Political parties had until then to inform the Commission if they had nominated candidates who also appeared on the list of another party or who were nominated as independent candidates. One candidate appeared as an independent and also on a list of a party. The public may now inspect the lists as they will be available at the Commission's national, provincial and municipal offices between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. today and tomorrow. Authorities in the Northwest have commended their officers for arresting several people suspected of kidnapping 2 people in the province. Cousins 17-year-old Zara Mohammed and 19-year-old Batavia Mohammed were kidnapped while on their way to school in Hartbeespoort Dam earlier this month. They were reportedly kept at a house in Klipgat near Garankuwa. The provincial police spokesperson, Sabata Mohwabone, says some of the suspects were arrested at the house from where the cousins were rescued.
In the process of locating the victims, the determined team arrested 6 suspects. The 7th suspect, by the name of Humphrey Martin, aged 48, was arrested in the early hours of Friday morning, the 8th of March 2024, at Naturena in Johannesburg. He has already appeared in the Brits Magistrate Court on the 11th, the 18th and the 25th of March 2024. He remains in custody and is expected to appear again on Monday, the 8th of April 2024 for formal bail application.
The city of Cape Town says the life of one of its law enforcement officers has been saved after a bullet was lodged in his belt. This followed a shootout between officers and suspected hijackers. The member of the Mayoral Committee for Safety and Security, J.P. Smith, says officers were patrolling the streets of Nyanga when they saw a suspicious-looking vehicle and tried to stop it. The suspects then opened fire on the officers. Smith says the officers discovered 2 hijacked victims in the vehicle.
In the latest incident, one of our officers sustained an injury when the suspected hijackers opened fire on our staff members, and we wish him a speedy recovery. I also want to commend the officers for their situational awareness. Apart from the vehicle that they recovered, they also saved 2 hijacking victims from an uncertain fate.
And the International Relations Minister, Naledi Pandor, says she hopes the decision of the UN Security Council's demand for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza will spur on efforts towards a new hostage deal. The Council says the ceasefire should be for the remainder of the month of Ramadan. 14 member states voted in favor of the text, while the US abstained. Pandor, who is currently in the US city of Chicago, says America's abstention is not surprising after a number of vetoes in the Council.
I think they, had no choice but to semi-support because they recently moved a resolution on a ceasefire which wasn't supported by all the members of the Security Council. So cautiously optimistic. I believe it's an important step, and I hope it will put a spur to the negotiations that are underway with Egypt and Qatar supporting that process.
In recapping our top story this hour, the organization Judges Matter, which monitors the judiciary in South Africa, says it hopes the High Court in Johannesburg will today explain why it did not deliver judgment in the case between the ANC and the Electoral Commission yesterday. Headlines at the bottom of the hour for SFM News. I'm Nomalizo Mandela.
A very good morning to you in your SFM Sports headlines. Tonight's the night as Ikram Reyners aims to lead Bafana to glorious victory against Algeria. And in tennis, shocking exits at the Miami Open. The top seeds Iga Swiatek and Coco Gauff bow out early. Full details coming to you just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
It's been another crash now on Pretoria's N1 South. There was one after Atterbury. This is a new one before Atterbury. It's involving a motorcyclist. A really big queue, almost back as far as Stormful Road. It's super heavy this morning. N1 South leaving Pretoria down towards the Atterbury Road crashing. After that, if you veer off to the R21, that traffic stays heavy approaching the roadworks and lane closures at Olifantsfontein. Morning and afternoon peak times with the bigger volumes hitting the lane closures really does back up. The N12 and R24 route, a breakdown at Galuli, so that's still heavy. And the other side of town, the M1 North, 14th Avenue up to Bayers Nordia being held by collision scene. Now, Durban, if you're on the south coast wanting to get to the airport, just make sure you've got time to get through. You've got the normal bottleneck on the run through Spaghetti Junction. Queues from just after the M7, that's into the roadworks. And then a bigger delay through Commercial Highway up towards a breakdown around the gateway exit. A stationary vehicle on your way to Pietermaritzburg. It's a truck broken down at Ashburton, so from Linfield Park, that's all fairly heavy. Cape Town, much lighter this morning. Volumes on the lower side, although the N1 highway still fairly busy. Going to sit from sort of N1 City through to the elevated freeway. Also just heading into Stellenbosch, the R304. Out of all the routes going into Stellenbosch, the R304 is the only one showing real heavy delays, just passing Kaya-Mundi backed up into central Stellenbosch. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
9 after 8, good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. All right, lots to discuss this morning. We've been talking about the National Assembly Speaker, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. We've been talking, of course, about the situation in Gaza. We'll have more calls on that, I suspect, in the next little while. Other conversations around Eskom and coal contracts and things like that. The situation around the phone bill for the Gauteng Health Department. I'm sort of astonished on the directions of that story has been taking. Don't forget, from 8:30, big focus for you on how life in our country, your life, will change as a result of climate change. And of course, the number 086 000 2032. Good morning, it's 10 after 8.
Buying a new TV? You'll need a paid-up TV license. Need to check your balance? No sweat at all. You just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 for fast, effective balance inquiries. Secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Get to Discount Pharmacies for great offers for the whole family. Get a free Bionica Defense 100ml micellar water with the purchase of any Bionica Defense Color Foundation from R295 each. Save R119.90 when you buy any 2 Head & Shoulders Supreme 400ml shampoo or 275ml conditioner for just R160. And buy Baby Things Premium Nappies for just R189.99. Valid until 7 April at Discount Pharmacies. Better health starts here.
ES Tunis plan to disallow their visitors any breathing moment, but ASEC Mimosas remain extremely hungry for maximum points on the road. The North takes on the West. This is the first leg quarter-final battle of the CAF Champions League. Witness Africa's beautiful game. ES Tunis versus ASEC Mimosas on Saturday, 30 March at 11 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
Let's go to AB on the line from eThekwini, Durban. AB, hi, good morning. You want to talk about the United Nations Security Council decision? It's a big decision.
Yes, well, the problem with the call for a ceasefire, Stephen, at the United Nations is that there's no reference to or else, meaning that if Israel does not comply, what action will be taken against it? It's like a judge declaring that a person is guilty of murder, and then nothing, no sentence is pronounced. For action to be contemplated, another resolution has to be drafted. If it took 7 months to get to this stage of a call for a ceasefire, do you think the U.S. will allow any kind of action against Israel? Like, for example, it got together the coalition of the willing to bomb Iraq because it ignored UN resolution.
Yeah.
So bottom line, no action will be taken against Israel, and its leaders have already said to the world that it can go and fly a kite. But there is a silver lining here, Stephen. The ceasefire call by the world is another nail in the PR coffin of Israel, which always projected itself over the past 75 years as the poor victim of Palestinian terrorism. It is now increasingly viewed as a pariah state, a skunk on the world stage, and this is a huge turning point. Finally, Stephen, there is a reason why Palestinians are dying. It is a tale of two captives. Netanyahu is a captive of the lunatic right-wing racist parties to whom he has all but abdicated his power. Any move to draw down the attack on Gaza by him would mean the end of this coalition, and he will be out in the cold and will possibly face jail for fraud charges that are on hold while he is prime minister. Secondly, genocide Joe Biden is the captive of the pro-Israeli lobby in Washington that determines the fate of politicians depending on their posture towards Israel. One wrong move by Joe, and he will be trumped at the forthcoming U.S. election.
So, AB,
that's my take on that, Stephen.
Sure. There's another thing that I think may be important, because we know that Trump, the former U.S. President Donald Trump, is a very strong supporter of Israel. If Biden moves, and this is not an argument to defend Biden, I'm just saying, if Biden moves too far away from Israel, could Trump win the elections, and would that be worse for Gaza?
Well, most certainly. You know, it's a choice between two bad guys because they are not going to take any strong action. And if you remember, Donald Trump moved the embassy to Jerusalem, the American embassy. And secondly, he all but gave away the Golan Heights to Israel also. Two very big moves indeed.
All right, AB on the line from eThekwini. Thank you. The view from him. Your views, 086 000 2032, 14 after 8.
First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
An important story in Business Day yesterday about food. And what Business Day has suggested is that food retailers and food manufacturers, and all of those that are actually listed on the JSE, have reported lower volumes. In other words, less food has actually been sold by all the companies, the big companies that is, that produce food. You know that food price inflation's been very high. It's beginning to come down now. But the fact is that the amount of money we've been paying for food has gone up dramatically in the last 2 years. So what's actually going on? I mean, if less food is being sold, are people eating less food? And what does that mean? Mama Podi Khadima is the Managing Director at African Response. Mama Podi, good morning, and thank you for your time this morning.
Good morning, Stephen.
Are people eating less food? I mean, as a whole, as a country, this would be very bad news.
Stephen, I think what we're seeing is that people are rationing. People are reorganizing what they are buying, what they are eating, when and how they are eating their food. And this is mainly brought through because finances are tight. South Africans' financial purses are getting tighter and tighter. I think me and you do know and do see that unemployment in the country is increasing, youth unemployment is increasing, and I think salaries, I don't know about you, but in my wood, there hasn't been any much of salary increases. So the purse is getting smaller and smaller. And for South Africans, it is about looking at what can we ration, what can we sacrifice. And it appears that it is food rationing. I'm not necessarily agreeing with the fact that they are buying less food. I think they are buying cleverly. And based on the work that African Response has done over a period of time, I mean, we've done a lot of work in the area of stockpiles, and we've realized that South Africans are investing their money through stockpiles, and a large portion of that is grocery stockpiles. where they are buying in bulk. So I think for me, it is also about understanding the dynamics and the area of changes that South Africans are reconfiguring the way they do things.
Either way, it shows that people are changing what they eat and how they eat it. They're changing their sort of food-related behavior because they have no choice. So could people also be eating less variety? In other words, people are eating the same boring thing all the time because they're looking for the cheapest thing they can get. And the cheapest thing they can get is what they're going to eat more often.
The work that we've done in African Response amongst the lower to middle income consumers definitely shows that the type of meals and the type of food that South Africans eat is slightly different from your higher end or your higher income consumer. So it is looking at the types of basket of goods, your maize meal, your bread, your flour. So it's looking at those type of food and saying what has happened in terms of price increases. And I think from the recent survey that we did just before and after the budget speech, just also demonstrated that South Africans, particularly the lower income consumers, are looking for a way in which they can stretch their budgets.
Are people eating fewer meals? So maybe you eat twice a day instead of 3 times a day, or you don't eat much at supper because you keep the food for your children?
On a lighter note, I'm just mentioning something that I hear a lot from my circle of people that I stick around with. There's a whole lot of talk about intermittent fasting, and I'm hearing and reading more about it, and that talks to skipping of breakfast. But I think within South Africans, particularly the lower income consumers, it is definitely about reducing the size of meal. We hear that 1 in 4 will skip a meal. From the survey that was done in the past, I think the Nedbank Financial Health Monitor that was released last year definitely did confirm that there is a heightened reduction in terms of what people are rationing to stretch their budgets.
I'd always hoped that we would never see starvation in South Africa, in any case. And we've seen a couple of cases in the Eastern Cape where children have not had enough food to eat, 1 or 2 terrible cases. Are you worried that we might have more cases like that?
I think South Africans are very practical and they look for things. Particularly, I'm talking about the lower to middle income consumers that African Response engages on an ongoing basis. There is a lot that takes place that we don't realize. Obviously, there's dependency on social grants and all, but there is definitely a way that South Africans are looking for ways in which they can stretch their money. And I'm mentioning grocery stockpiles because it is a way in which South Africans have realized that, you know what, I might not necessarily be able to afford food throughout the year, but let me buy bulk when I've got money. So that is a clever way in which South Africans are also working around tighter budgets and avoiding a situation in which they go through starvation. And I think this has always been an old age behavior from our great-grandfathers. They provide for darker days. And I think through some of the grocery stockpiles that we've seen from the African Response research that we've done over time, it's definitely that South Africans are proactive and protecting themselves.
Mamapudi Khadima, thank you. Managing Director at African Response. Really appreciate the time. Really important issues coming up there. 20 minutes after 8.
Yanga have a massive mission to dish out orders in Dar es Salaam against 2016 champions. However, Masandawana believe in their ability to succeed anywhere on African soil. This is the first leg quarter-final encounter of the CAF Champions League. Witness Africa's beautiful game. Young Africans versus Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday 30 March at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
And we would buy 500 cars and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
The Masked Singer South Africa is coming to a mall near you. Join in on the fun from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. at Maponya Mall from the 21st to the 24th of March, Centurion Mall from the 28th to the 31st of March, Blue Route Mall, Cape Town from the 4th to the 7th of April. Meet the masks, win awesome prizes. Channel your inner megastar with Season 2 of The Masked Singer South Africa, only on S3. Open up.
The Science of Life on SAFM.
Well, there's new research out that suggests that the more that parents believe that their children will have a better future, the more likely they are to spend time playing with them, reading to them, and of course the better future that those children will have. In other words, it's a survey, it's a paper that shows how important belief can be, and I suppose in some strange way, optimism for your children. Professor Eric Atmore is the director of the Centre for Early Childhood Development. Professor Atmore, good morning.
Stephen, good morning, and good morning to your listeners.
It's a really interesting question. Why do some people put more time and effort, spend more time with their children than others? A lot of it is because I think people just don't have the time. A lot of it is that parenting is perhaps learnt. You learnt it from your parents. But there's also, and this evidence is interesting, that people who believe their children can have a better future, they're going to spend a lot more time with them. In other words, it's about hope.
Yes, Stephen, the research is very good and very accurate. You know, there are a multiplicity of factors. First of all, parents must have the time, they must have the willingness. The irony is that if you reverse those two variables, the more parents read and play with their children, the better their future as well. So it works both ways. And I'm heartened by the fact that for perhaps the first time, we're looking at the role of parents in the early development of their young children.
And I mean, it's interesting because it's actually quite hard to study. I mean, do you go and ask people, how much time are you spending with your children? Do you ask the children? Do you ask community members? And I must say, underneath all of this, no parents ever said, I spend too much time with my children. No one says that. Everyone says, I wish I could spend more.
Yes, you know, part of the methodology of this research is that it's all self-reported. So a field worker would have gone out and would have interviewed the parents. So we have to go on trust, but it's clear, you know, it's logical that if parents have a belief that what they are doing with their young children, whether it's reading or playing or both, certainly it gives them hope and inspires them, and they keep going.
How can we incentivize, how can we encourage people to do more of this, to spend more time with their children? And obviously only if they have the time. Many people don't.
I think the first thing is we have to highlight the incredible importance of parents on the early development of their child. And it's not only with the child who's 4 turning 5 or who's about to enter grade 1. From birth, and some people would say even from conception, that bonding happens. And I think we need to really get across to parents that these are relatively inexpensive, not time-consuming activities that we can do with our young children, and that they will emerge better prepared for life and for school. The converse of that also is that the parents will feel empowered and take pride in rearing their young children. I think part of the problem is that we think education happens in the school. It doesn't only happen in the school. It starts from conception all the way through the birth process and in those critical early years. But we have to instill the confidence in our parents.
Is it also learnt? You learn it from other parental figures around you, your own parents, but also maybe grandparents, people in the community. You see how people interact with their children. You learn from them. Some of this, what I'm trying to get to, is it's self-reinforcing over time, isn't it?
Yes. Look, there's so many positive stimuli that enable parents to get involved with their young children, and certainly their own upbringing. The presence of grandparents is very, very important. What's happening in the community. And I think, you know, there's another spin-off that those parents who believe in their children, who support them fully, we won't end up like another case as we have in Saldanha Bay with that poor little girl who is still missing a month later. I think parents really have an incredibly important role to play in child rearing.
Thank you very much indeed, Professor Eric Atmore. I really do appreciate the time. Professor Atmore is at the Centre for Early Childhood Development. Just interesting to see how important the parents are when it comes to education, but also just the development of children. Also, in a way, we mustn't forget this, how difficult it can be to actually bring up children. I'm sure any parent will have a view on that. 27 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Ikram Rainier is ready for tonight.
Yes, it seems he's ready to turn the field into somewhat of a braai, bringing in the fire. And let's hope it's going to be a sizzling match against Algeria tonight at the Nelson Mandela Stadium. Bafana facing off against Algeria in what promises to be a thrilling international FIFA series match. The spotlight shines on striker Ikram Rainier, Bafana's very own goal-seeking missile, who's all set to lead our national team to victory. Now, the Stellenbosch marksman, under the keen eye of coach Hugo Bruges, is determined to leave a mark and solidify his position in the team ahead of the FIFA World Cup qualifiers. Let's listen to what Rainier had to say ahead of this crucial match.
For me to achieve in a game like that, it's obviously to score 1 or 2 goals, and for me it's just to do my best for the team and help the team winning. That's that matter for me. For Algeria, it's not going to be an easy game. Even for us, it's not going to be an easy game. It's going to be a difficult game. But we need to push and work hard, motivate each other, help each other to at least win the game.
The match kicks off at 11 p.m. tonight, and you can catch it live on SABC1. Boxing now, where the Minister of Sports, Arts and Culture, Zizi Kodwa, is expected to announce the new process to be followed in appointing yet another new Boxing South Africa board. This was confirmed that the reasons behind the withdrawal of the intention, and that was of a court challenge brought by the National Professional Boxing Promoters Association. The NPBPA, as they're known, has taken Kodwa, BSA, as well as the new board to court, citing a lack of consultation before the board was appointment, and they were successful in interdicting the new board. But of course, the latest authorities won't affect the accounting authority, and that's Mandla Nhlanganiso. The new board will be chaired by Safisa Shongwe, Princess Magoma, Nande Mpeshe, Sekiwe Sodo, Laksolo September, as well as Dr. Mary Jean Matata Sitati. Moving to tennis action, where the whirlwind of tennis and at the Miami Open has witnessed a seismic shakeup. The world number 1 Iga Swiatek and the American favorite Coco Gauff both been ousted after the competition in surprising upsets. Swiatek fell to the formidable Ekaterina Alexandrova, who delivered a masterclass in precision and power, winning 6-4, 6-2, while France's Caroline Garcia continued her impressive run, sending the home crowd favourite Coco Gauff 6-3, 1-6, 6-2. And we also have Elena Rybakina beating Madison Keys to reach the quarterfinals of the Miami Open. The Kazakhstani will play the 8th seed Maria Sakkari, and that's in the next round. In the men's draw, Alex de Minaur, he's through to the last 16, and Jan-Lennard Struff making him work hard, though. The Australian number 10, Minaur, came through 7-6, 6-4 against the German Struff. And finally, a special moment in, college sort of rugby, where Jeppe High claimed a historic first ever victory over Grey College last night. It was Jeppe who held out for a 22-19 victory against the schoolboy rugby giants Grey College. And that's wrap up sport on Sunrise. We'll bring you more sport on SAFM at around 12:30. I'm Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. Good morning. We'll talk about your future and climate change. That's next. You're with SAFM leading the conversation. It's 8:30.
And in the headlines, the political career of the former Springbok coach Peter de Villiers is in jeopardy after the Good Party's National Management Committee confirmed terminating his party membership yesterday. This after finding him guilty of breaching the party's constitution and code of conduct following a sexual misconduct complaint lodged against him in January. In other news, the Electoral Commission says members of the public who wish to lodge their objections against a candidate must do so with the Commission by 5 p.m. from tomorrow. The Commission has also reported that 14,662 candidates have been nominated to contest the 887 seats available in the National Assembly and the 9 legislatures. And the organization Judges Matter, which monitors the judiciary in South Africa, says it hopes the High Court in Johannesburg will today explain why it did not deliver judgment in the case between the ANC and the Electoral Commission yesterday. More on these and other stories at the top of the hour.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Good morning. Still heavy leaving Pretoria on the M1 South. There's a series of collisions. One after Atterbury's been cleared, but there's another one around Linwood and one just before Atterbury. So it's a heavy backlog after Stormful Road all the way through to that final crashing just before the Atterbury exit. The R21 towards the airport easing, about a 5-minute delay to get through the Clayville Roadworks area. N12 and R24 into Galuli stay busy from Ekurhuleni, a breakdown and a crashing, in fact, before you get into the interchange. And the N1 North still queued up through 14th Avenue towards a crash at Bayers Nordeer. Ahead of that, it looks okay through Randburg and up through towards the Fourways area. Now, the Vanderklele Road, Isipingo area south of Durban remains closed. Day 2 of protesting action there. A breakdown on the M2 North just before Gateway in the roadworks. That traffic stays heavy. Backlogs through Komashu Highway. Big queues on your way to the airport up that side. And Cape Town, the N1 inbound, the heaviest of the highway, still queuing from sort of Goodwood Parow area in towards city centre. Behind that, both the Kuberg Road and Marine Drive options are very slow, just coming into that traffic at the N1 inbound. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
Buying a new TV? You'll need a paid-up TV license. Need to check your balance? No sweat at all. You just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 for fast, effective balance inquiries. Secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Fly better to your next holiday. Book your flights with Emirates to a holiday in Dubai, London, Istanbul, or Paris. Look forward to delicious regionally inspired cuisine, enjoy free-flowing premium drinks, and relax to your favorite movies on the way. Because it's not just about the destination, it's how you get there. This year, fly Emirates. Fly better.
ES Tunis plan to disallow their visitors any breathing moment, but ASEC Mimosas remain extremely hungry for maximum points on the road. The North takes on the West. This is the first leg quarter-final battle of the CAF Champions League. Witness Africa's beautiful game. ES Tunis versus ASEC Mimosas on Saturday 30 March at 11 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. # We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
26 minutes now to 9 the time. Time for your mediated conversation this morning. A new report compiled by climate scientists is predicting that we will have more heat waves like the one we had in Gauteng in the near future, that there'll be huge amounts of heat stress for people in some parts of the country, and that there'll be more flooding in KwaZulu-Natal in the near future. The group says this is all because of climate change, and that all of this will happen if the global average temperature increases by just 2 degrees Celsius from the pre-industrial average. The group also says the amount of food that we produce could be reduced if the climate changes in this way, and that in fact in some places it may be almost impossible to work in open fields during the heat of the day. It also suggests there will be a hugely unequal impact. People who live in informal settlements or people who cannot get access to their own water on a regular basis will be the people who suffer the most. So then what will be the impact of climate change? Is it possible to plan ahead to mitigate the impact on our society and on you? First this morning, one of the authors of the report, Anton Cartwright, is a researcher at the African Centre for Cities at the University of Cape Town and was also a lead author in the 2018 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Then, another view Will it be as bad as this report predicts? Professor Tafadzo Mabaude is a professor of climate change, food systems and health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And finally, how to mitigate against this? What preparations can we make? Professor Rudolf Berger is a climatologist, president of the National Association for Clean Air, and is at the University of Northwest. We start then with Anton Cartwright. Anton, good morning and thank you for your time.
Good morning.
What do you believe will happen in South Africa if global average temperatures do rise in the way that you describe? What are we looking at?
Well, Stephen, thank you very much. This is a synthesis report, and what we try to do as the 6 authors who came together to write it is, as the title suggests, to pull together everything that we think we know about future impacts. And as you've already discussed, that spanned food, that spanned the impact of heat waves, droughts, heavy rainfall. But we try to take it a step further and get out of the trap that sometimes we fall into as climate scientists, which is jargon and sort of quite technical language. And we try to translate those biophysical impacts, if you like, into something that is more meaningful for people in South Africa on an everyday basis. And so we did that translation into the impacts on food, the impacts on work, the impacts on infrastructure and services, the impacts on tourism. These are, I think, the things that people are focusing on every day in South Africa. And I think that translation is quite important because what it does, if you get it right, is it says, it dismisses the idea that this isn't our problem, that we have more important things to think about. And so the report tries to join those dots between, these big geophysical climate impacts that one reads about in the headlines every day, and then what it actually means for people on a day-to-day basis. And so no one can say after this report that this isn't my problem, or this doesn't affect me, or I've got more important things to deal with.
Okay. One of the things you point to is problems with food production. If it's hotter, I imagine it'll be harder to produce cheap food.
Yes, on the whole. And those are the sort of statements we've seen emerging around the world. Plants generally don't do better in hotter, drier conditions, so it's more difficult to grow crops. The same is true for many of our animal and livestock products. But, I think it's important to say, I don't want to get ahead of the conversation here, but I think it's important to say that the final section of the report is called Act and Adapt. And so, what we do is we lay out, I think, quite clear in stark terms what will happen if we do nothing. But then we actually point to the fact that it's never a case that we do nothing. And already, particularly in the agricultural sector, actually, already people are taking action. And there's some quite available things, quite readily available options that farmers are already pointing the way to. And so it's imperative that we identify those, that we kind of recognize them, and then we support them, and then we're able to scale them across people. Because otherwise, as you pointed out in the introduction, it'll be the very typical South African situation where, those who can are able to adapt and to some degree mitigate the risk and protect themselves, and the most vulnerable, the people who can at least afford the impacts of climate change, will be the ones who are left behind. And that's a situation which I think we can all agree South Africa just should not be contemplating at all.
Okay. One of the things, I just want to go through one or two of the potential impacts. So I live in Gauteng. We saw and we felt for 6 weeks a very long, very hot heat wave. Is that the kind of thing that would become that would happen more often? Instead of it happening once every decade, it would probably happen once a year.
That's exactly right. What the report says, let's just take heat as one of the parameters that we work through in the report, that on average so far, and average is a little bit in this context, but on average, South Africa is warming at 0.2 degrees Celsius a decade. Okay, that might not sound like very much to some people, but over a couple of decades, what that means is precisely what you said, is that the frequency of these extreme events and their intensity changes quite significantly. And so, what we have experienced already by way of heat waves, droughts in the Western Cape, floods in KwaZulu-Natal, that's exactly, things that were in the tails of the sort of distribution curve, if you like. Things that were seen as outliers and infrequent events suddenly become much more frequent. And on top of that, they probably become more intense as well when we experience them.
And it's not just heat, it would also be flooding like we've seen in KwaZulu-Natal.
Yes. So what the report works through is the impacts of heat. Obviously, things are getting warmer and drier, and so heat plus less rain in many parts of the country, drier, and that usually translates into droughts. So what South Africa's always experienced some degree of droughts, but what the report predicts is more frequent and longer and more intense droughts. But then, and this is, I suppose, for some people, confusing, a bit of a paradox. When we do receive rainfall, because of the additional energy in the atmosphere, when we do receive rainfall, it tends to be in fewer but much more intense events. Okay, so that means heavy rainfall, and coupled with the way that we've already altered habitats, water catchments, we put a lot of roads, and we've sealed a lot of surfaces which don't absorb water. That tends to translate into droughts. And so what we saw in KwaZulu-Natal was an extreme event. By any stretch of the imagination, that was an extreme event. But I think that is the sort of thing which becomes more frequent under the influence of climate change. And it's precisely the combinations of these risks. What happens if you have a flood and then another flood, or a flood and then a drought, or a drought and then a heat wave? I think this is what people are grappling with and struggling to cope with. We can usually cope with one-off event, but when it becomes extreme and when it comes on the back of other stresses and risks, then I think it becomes quite difficult to cope with.
You talked about farmers changing their practices, for example, and I'm going to come to that a little later in our conversation. Is it too late to stop the climate changing in the way that you predicted will change?
I think some things are too late at a global level. Right? This isn't South Africa's fault or problem exclusively. So I think we have locked in a degree of climate change. Certainly when we talk about sea level rise, we know that the sea levels will keep rising. So what the report says is that over the last century, we've had about 15 to 20 centimeters of sea level rise around the South African coastline. We know that those sea levels will keep rising, probably for at least another 200 years. So some impacts are locked in, which is why we foreground the need to adapt. We're going to have to change some practices. But I do think that if we can keep greenhouse gases out of our economic system, something which is proving very, very difficult to do, but we do have some of the technologies and we know how to do that. If we can reduce the emission of greenhouse gases, we can still avoid the very worst impacts of climate change. And this is over a 2050, 2100 timescale. So we do have to look down the track when we have this conversation and try and avoid long-term adverse impacts.
Anton Cartwright, thank you very much indeed. Researcher at the African Centre for Cities and a lead author at the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change in 2018. Your mediated conversation continues here on SFM at 17 minutes to 9. Professor Tafadzwa Mabaudi is Professor of Climate Change, Food Systems and Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Professor Mabaudi, good morning. Thank you for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Thank you.
Do you think climate change in South Africa, the impact of it is going to be as bad as Anton Cartwright has spelled out?
I think what we have to recognize, Stephen, is that climate change has already occurred and the impacts are already widespread and significant. We are already seeing the effects in agriculture, energy, health, and in our ecosystems and water resources. So it's not a question of if, because it's something that is already underway. It's more a question of how do we halt further climate change, especially avoid the extreme scenarios, and how do we adapt to the current change that has already occurred across the systems, as well as mitigate any further climate change.
It would seem from this report that the rate of change might speed up. Yes, we've seen climate change and we've experienced that, but actually it's going to change probably more dramatically in the next 10, 20 years?
Yes, because currently there haven't been any significant efforts towards halting greenhouse gas emissions. There have been commitments, but globally and even here in South Africa, we have struggled to cut down on our own greenhouse gas emissions. So I guess there's an urgent need for us to halt those emissions. There are a lot of discussions going on about the just energy transition, moving to renewables and all of those things. But unless action is taken immediately, we are certainly going to experience further rises. And the long-term trajectory is what is at risk and what we need really to control.
One of the key issues surely is going to be water and water availability. And as Anton Cartwright points out, you could actually have, because there's more energy in the atmosphere when it's hotter, you could actually have more intense rains when it does rain. Now, if you want to build another dam or you want to have phase 2 of the Lesotho Highlands Water Project to bring water from Lesotho to Gauteng, for example, these are major projects. They take years. We would need to build new dams. We would need to do whatever we need to do now for 10 years' time. In other words, we need to start mitigating all of this right now.
Correct. But what we must also understand is that the impacts of climate change are interlinked and therefore require more of interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary approaches. For example, you mentioned water. Water is not just about the resource itself, it's also linked to environmental flows, what we need to maintain the ecosystems. It's also linked to human supply for access to water. It's also a vector for diseases and so forth. So when you think of one sector, you need to think of the interlinked impacts on related sectors and also on people and livelihoods. Now, then when we respond, we need to respond also in a manner that integrates those things. So we know that water will be at risk, we know that energy will be at risk, we know that food will be at risk, we know that ecosystems will be at risk, and we know that people and livelihoods will be at risk. So how do we design integrated projects now that sort of address multiple objectives? So we need to shift from the siloed mentality where projects or interventions are currently being developed in sectors. We have sector-specific adaptation strategies. Those need to be linked, those need to be integrated so that we balance or mitigate trade-offs. It's going to become very important as we move into the future to mitigate trade-offs and really optimize and maximize the synergies across systems. And that's how we start to see some of the change coming in and also being broad and systematic.
Part of this is also, the big thing when it comes to water is going to be food production. You can probably get enough water to the right place to keep human beings alive, but you need a huge amount of water to produce food. The way and where we produce food, is that going to change?
The way and where we produce food definitely needs to change. Currently, a significant amount of our food production is under rain-fed, which means it relies on rainfall, and therefore it is particularly vulnerable to droughts and erratic rainfall or changes in rainfall patterns. So we need to adapt that sector. There is potential to increase irrigation, but to a limited extent. So it's not a silver bullet per se, but there's potential to increase irrigation and access to irrigation in certain risk areas and de-risk food production. We also need to think of innovative ways of producing food, such as vertical agriculture, hydroponics, aquaculture, systems that use water more efficiently and also use energy more efficiently. And at the same time, think of ways where we can produce food on a limited or smaller area of land. Because one of the challenges that's also impacting climate change is the expansive nature of agriculture, which is driving land use change and biodiversity loss. So all of those considerations need to be put in place. The good thing is there are solutions, there are lessons abound, because other areas in the world have experienced these conditions much longer than we have. So there is scope for us to learn lessons from elsewhere and adapt those lessons to our context in South Africa.
There'll be other consequences. We know in other countries when there have been long heat waves, the number of excess deaths, the number of people who die prematurely because of the heat goes up. We'll start to see that happening here too.
Definitely. I think health is an area that has not really received as significant attention as it should when it comes to climate change impacts. Most of the attention has always gone towards agriculture and food, mostly because we need to eat, and water, because of the example we had with Day Zero in Cape Town. But health is very significant. We've done research at the University of KwaZulu-Natal that also associated the repeated effects of drought and exposures to disasters with mental health, things such as depression, anxiety, and that is worrisome. There's also implications on gender-based violence, because heat waves and all of these things, people become more irritable, easily agitated. And we already have a GBV problem in South Africa. That could become amplified as well. There are other social issues related to public health, waterborne diseases, things such as malaria becoming problematic in South Africa. So I think it's one key area that we really need to focus on in terms of how we adapt to climate change.
Professor Tavatswa Mabaudi, thank you. Professor of Climate Change, Food Systems and Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. In a moment, what can we do to mitigate all of this with Professor Roelof Burger? It's 10 minutes to 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still very heavy on the run out of Pretoria this morning on the M1 South. It's a big crash just before you get to Atterbury Road, and traffic is still all the way back heavily across all lanes to the N4 Emalathani Highway. Major delay alerts if you're going through Giluli's interchange off the N3. There's been a truck crash as you come off the N3, get through Giluli's onto the N12. So the N3 going north, heavy backlogs from Germiston, southbound heavy backlogs from Edenvale. The N3 is jamming both ways as you get to those ramps to take you off the N3 and onto the N12 and R24 eastbound carriageways. It's a major backlog at Giluli's, and then everybody coming in having a look at that on the N12 and R24 east. Those or the R24 west and the N12 west coming in from the Ekurhuleni side heavy as well. So the crash going east, but westbound also getting caught up. Just trying to avoid Giluli's. This time of year, the alternative side roads are open and flowing, and you want to get onto those and avoid the highways around that interchange area. Durban today, a breakdown on the N2 north just before Gateway, still there. Quite heavy pressure getting up through Kormashu, exit towards that particular scene. Cape Town having a gentle sort of Tuesday morning, with the exception being the N1. That's still fairly busy from sort of Goodwood Parow area towards the elevated freeway. And just a reminder, no traffic lights on Marine Drive at Sunset Beach. I think they might have had some traffic officers there earlier to calm things down, but it looks like they've left, and it's all of a sudden got very busy coming from Dolphin Beach through Sunset Beach on your way to Milnerton Bad. And the N2, a major truck crash just north of Pitt Retief. If you're doing Pitt Retief to Ermelo, go a bit later. That roadway is completely blocked. 2 or 3 trucks in a massive crash north of Pitt Retief blocking the N2. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
So, you've reached a T-junction on the road. You can go left or right. Within 32 days after receiving an RTO traffic fine, you can pay the fine and get a 50% discount. Pay in installments, nominate the driver responsible, make a representation, or elect to be tried in court. To learn more about the Administrative Adjudication of Road Traffic Offences Act and your rights and options as a motorist, go to rtia.co.za. Change the way South Africa drives. RTIA, giving you peace of mind on the road.
Yanga have a massive mission to dish out orders in Dar es Salaam against 2016 champions. However, Masandawana believe in their ability to succeed anywhere on African soil. This is the first leg quarter-final encounter of the CAF Champions League. Witness Africa's beautiful game. Young Africans versus Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday 30 March at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
Continuing your mediated conversation around how a changing climate is going to change your life at 7 minutes now to 9. Professor Roelof Burgers, a climatologist, president of the National Association for Clean Air at the University of Northwest. Professor Burger, good morning.
Morning, Stephen.
So we can see our country is about to change. What steps can we take now to prepare us for this?
Well, I would say the first thing that we have to focus on is not to get paralyzed by this message that seems like it's all doom and gloom. You know, there's this idea of climate anxiety or eco-anxiety, and especially young people find themselves in this place where they just feel so despondent by the reality that they then eventually don't act. So we should find some positive things to grasp onto, and I think one thing is, a decade ago, we wouldn't be listening to 4 specialists all agreeing and saying, like, we are facing these challenges. We would also not have listened to a multidisciplinary conversation. So there are a lot of good things happening in the space, and although things seem dire, and these predictions that we talked about, I wholeheartedly agree with, there are still some hope, and I think especially our young people should feel a little bit of excitement to be part of the future and part of solutions in the future.
There's certain things that obviously we need to do in terms of planning. So we need to plan, for example, every council needs to plan for more intense rainfall, more flooding. I mean, that's the kind of thing that no matter where in the country you are, you probably need to plan for.
Exactly, and you mentioned infrastructure before, and one of the problems is our infrastructure in the world was developed for a certain kind of climate, And now we see a shift in that climate. And one of your guests mentioned the fact that, we typically talk about averages when we mention changes, but the impacts happen on the extremes. It's the weather that actually impacts things. So, and the weather is also changing, and that is where the infrastructure damage comes. So we are facing massive challenges in damage to our infrastructure. But again, a potential positive is you must know that there's now this new international damage fund that's been set up, and that poses us opportunities. If there is damage to infrastructure, we can then redesign and build and strengthen our infrastructure to be more resilient to these kind of events in the future. But infrastructure planning and enhancement has to be a key component of us tackling the future.
I mean, all of this also requires planning, and that's what governments are for. I know government does take climate change seriously. Do you believe it's actually spending the money on the infrastructure that we're going to need, and no one really has more money at the moment?
That is a problem, and part of that resilience is the economy. If we have a vibrant economy and we have people that has potential jobs, then we're also enhancing their resilience to these events. So finding the funds is a real problem, and that's why I mentioned the loss and damage fund that has been created as a potential source. But it's not only that, it's everything. We've listened to all the different dimensions that weather and climate impacts our lives. And that means that everything we do, whether it's city planning, whether it's transport, whether it's energy, we don't have that luxury that we had in past years, where we can spill money and we can waste a little bit of resources on the side. We're going to have to be very effective in every bit of planning that we undertake to make sure that we optimize every cent.
One of the issues that really worries me is around food production. And we know that our agricultural industry, and there's been reference to it already, is very adaptive. But it means that a lot is going to change. The industry will change. Maybe what we eat will change. Maybe even, and you would have an interest in this, the air that we breathe might change in terms of its quality, for example. In other words, 20 years from now, life could look a lot different.
Exactly. You've heard these 2 degrees Celsius is sort of what we're aiming for, hopefully below 1.5 degrees change. And people typically don't realize that if they say that on a global scale, we're looking at a 1.5 or 2 degrees change. For South Africa, that typically means a 4 degrees on average change in temperatures. And if we do see that, it will mean, for example, that our maize growing area will probably be under stress, and we, the lekker mieliepap that we eat will be something that will be only there for the rich. So definitely we will have to adapt and find better and more clever ways to grow food for the masses.
Professor Roelof Burger, thank you very much indeed. A climatologist, president of the National Association of Clean Air at the University of Northwest. My thanks also to Professor Tafadzwa Mabudi, Professor of Climate Change, Food Systems and Health at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. And starting us off today, Anton Cartwright, researcher at the African Centre for Cities at the University of Cape Town, also lead author on the 2018 Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. All right, so change is happening, as you know. The question, I suppose, is then how do we plan around it? Well, thank you for being with us on SAFM Sunrise this morning. We will be back with you tomorrow. From Du, from Stanza, from Melissa, from Zelma, myself. Look after yourself. You're with SAFM leading the conversation. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock.
Independent and impartial. This is SAFM News.
Top stories this hour. Good Party confirms terminating de Villiers' membership in Pandor to conclude U.S. visit. Good morning. The political career of the former Springbok coach Peter de Villiers is in jeopardy after the Good Party's National Management Committee confirmed terminating his party membership yesterday. This after finding him guilty of breaching the party's constitution and code of conduct. This means he is no longer a member of the Western Cape Legislature. Action against de Villiers follows a sexual misconduct complaint the party lodged against him in January. The Good Party's national chairperson Matthew Cook says an investigation and a formal hearing followed the allegations. And in our election-related news, the Electoral Commission says members of the public who wish to lodge their objections against a candidate must do so with the Commission by 5 p.m. tomorrow. The Commission has also reported that 14,662 candidates have been nominated to contest the 887 seats available in the National Assembly and the 9 legislatures. The Commission will publish the final list of candidates contesting the elections on the 10th of next month. The organization Judges Matter, which monitors the judiciary in South Africa, says it hopes the High Court in Johannesburg will today explain why it did not deliver judgment in the case between the ANC and the Electoral Commission yesterday. The Electoral Court in Bloemfontein was supposed to deliver judgment, but the Chairman Delisile Nhlapo informed the affected parties that there were some details that the court was dealing with. The ANC is challenging the Commission's registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, arguing that it is unlawful. The organization's researcher Mbekezeli Benjamin says they are looking forward to the judgment.
And I'm hoping that they will also explain why it took an extra day, because, like I said, judgments are usually handed down or written within a period of 3 months. So to reduce that period into 3 days is quite a huge task. And so I'm hoping they'll explain to us why they needed an extra day in addition to the 3 days in which they took to write the judgment.
The man who is set to become Senegal's youngest ever president has promised to bring reconciliation after weeks of political turmoil. Bassirou Diomaye Faye, who was released from prison less than 2 weeks ago, told a news conference in Dakar that he would rebuild the country's institutions. The BBC's Thomas Nadi reports.
Bassirou Diomaye Faye said he will govern with humility and will tackle corruption. Mr. Faye, who is 44, will be Senegal's youngest head of state yet. Earlier this month, he was still in jail on charges including insurrection. The official results have yet to be announced, but the candidate of the governing coalition, Amadou Ba, has admitted defeat. The outgoing president, Macky Sall, described Mr. Faye's victory as a win for the people of Senegal.
And the International Relations Minister, Naledi Pandor, says policy differences between South Africa and the US should not lead to conflict or hostilities between the two countries. Pandor was speaking from Chicago as she nears the conclusion of a working visit to the US. Her trip included an earlier stop in Washington, D.C., where she engaged a cross-section of stakeholders from members of Congress to business, civil society, and academia. Pandor says South Africa values its relationship with the U.S.
While we do have different foreign policy perspectives on a range of issues, these reflect our country's policies. They are not a reason for conflict or hostility between us. And this is what I've been saying. South Africa is a very strong supporter of the promotion of human rights and the end of all forms of oppression against people who continue to suffer oppression. Hence our relationship and support for the people of Palestine. But this doesn't detract by any means from values that the United States of America holds dear, such as respect for human rights, for freedom and democracy.
And recapping our top story this hour, the political career of the former Springbok coach Peter de Villiers is in jeopardy after the Good Party's National Management Committee confirmed terminating his party membership yesterday. Headlines at the bottom of the hour for SFM News. I'm Nomalizo Mandela.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. If you're active on social media and love SAFM, we hope you'll take a moment to like or follow our SAFM page on Facebook and Twitter. These are the best places to find all the guest information, conversations, and stories you love from your favorite presenters, along with regular updates from SABC News. And don't forget, you can send your questions to feedback@safm.co.za. SAFM, leading the conversation. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga.
You sat and reviewed the strictness of your parents, whether they were bad parents at the time, in your understanding, or you were able to separate and say they were strict, but they were still good parents.
When I was through it, I thought they were bad parents, guaranteed, because all I was looking at was, why are you treating me this way and the other person that way? Because we grew up 2 siblings, and I began to gain clarity as time went on, when I was now trying to be responsible and trying to apply all the knowledge that I was given as a child to then make that decision to say whether they were good or bad parents. And it helped me to show up better as an adult.
Thank you to our guest, Atenkosi Mdende.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. The Talking Point with Kathy Motlatlana. Weekdays, 9 a.m. till midday.
It's 7 after 9 o'clock. Welcome to the Talking Point. Unfortunately, we've had to switch things up a little bit this morning. We did not open with our opening clip as we would normally do. That's because we're watching what's coming out of Bloemfontein in the case against the ANC versus the MK veterans, really about the registration of the party. We're going to take you live to those particular proceedings, but in fact, we're expecting that judgment is going to get underway soon. So we're expecting 2 judgments today. The first one is in the judgment in the ANC versus the IEC matter, and it's over the registration of the MK party. Let's take you live to that particular ruling. It's coming out of the North Gauteng High Court.
Protected in Section 19 are realized. These rights include the right to participate in the activities of the political party and to campaign for a political party or cause. Political party membership is also a platform through which citizens stand for and, if elected, hold public office. It is therefore hardly surprising that although the ANC seeks no order against MK is vigorously opposing these proceedings. The Electoral Commission also opposes the application. The ANC seeks to invoke the court's review jurisdiction in terms of Section 20, subsection 1 of the Electoral Commission Act. This provision, read with Rule 6 of the Electoral Court rules, requires that it brings the application within 3 days of the impugned decision being made. It acknowledges that it failed to bring the application within the prescribed time. It is for that reason that it seeks condemnation for its delay in bringing the application. The ANC seeks that the impugned decision be reviewed under the principle of legality. In essence, the ANC's case is that the DCEO acted unlawfully and outside the bounds of the law in that he registered the MK, in that when he registered the MK, there was no application before him for such registration. It also alleges that the two notices published by MK in the Government Gazette, as required in terms of Section 15, subsection 4 big A, which we refer to in this judgment as Section 15, subsection 4 big A notices, were defective. The ANC is not persisting with this ground of review. The respondents have raised several points in limine. They both oppose the urgency and condonation relief with which the ANC seeks. They also contend that this court lacks jurisdiction over the matter. Both respondents oppose the application on the merits. Essentially, they contend that the application falls to be dismissed because when he made the impugned decision, there was a proper application for registration of MK as a political party before the DCO, and the impugned decision was lawfully made in terms of Section 15, subsection 1. On 1st June 2023, MK lodged with the DCEO its application for registration as a political party. On 9 June 2023, MK caused a Section 15, subsection 4 big A notice of its application to register as a political party to be published in the Government Gazette. It published a corrected Section 15, subsection 4 big A notice on 30 June 2023 after the Electoral Commission alerted it to defects in the 1st June 2023 notice. No objections were made in response to these notices. In a letter dated 4 August 2023, transmitted to MK by email on 8 August 2023, the DCEO advised MK that he rejected its application for registration as a political party because the signature of its purported supporters on the deed of foundation showed patterns of discrepancies which indicate that the signatures were made by a person other than a voter. The DCEO further advised MK that it was not precluded from submitting a fresh application that complies with all the applicable requirements. MK supplemented its application by remedying the defects identified by the DCO and resubmitted it on 30th August 2023. The DCO reconsidered the application, found that it met all the applicable statutory and regulatory requirements, and registered MK as a political party on 7 September 2023. On the 11th of September 2023, the ANC learned that MK was registered as a political party when it saw on social media a letter by the Electoral Commission to that effect. On 20th September 2023, the ANC lodged an appeal with the Electoral Commission against the DCO's decision to register MK as a political party on the basis that MK's registered name and its distinguishing mark or symbol resemble the name and the distinguishing mark or symbol of the ANC to such an extent that it may deceive or confuse voters as envisaged by Section 16, subsection 1B of the Electoral Act. On 24th November 2023, the Electoral Commission dismissed the ANC's appeal on the basis that it had failed to object as required by Section 15, subsection 4B of the Electoral Act to the registration of MK within 14 days from publication of MK's notice in terms of Section 15, subsection 4BA notice. The issues that arise for determination are primarily issues of law. They are as follows. A, whether the ANC's delay in bringing the application should be condoned. B, whether this court has jurisdiction over the relief the ANC seeks. C, whether there was a proper application for registration of MK when the impugned decision was made, and for that reason, when he made the impugned decision, the DCO acted beyond the scope of his powers as set out in Section 15, subsection A. I will now deal with the points in limine. Urgency and condonation. The ANC acknowledges that it brought the application outside the prescribed 3-day period. It has put up an application for the delay. It contends that if it is not afforded an urgent audience, it will be denied substantial redress in due course. Since it did not bring the application within 3 days of the impugned decision being made, in terms of Rule 10, the ANC is barred to bring the application unless, on good cause shown, this court directs otherwise. The party seeking condonation must give a full explanation for the delay. This is one of the factors to be considered when determining whether a condonation should be granted. The explanation must cover the entirety of the delay. The court also considers whether granting condonation would serve the interests of justice. The impugned decision was made on 7 September 2023. The ANC only brought this application on 9 January 2024. Its explanation for bringing the application outside the prescribed period is that it was not aware of the DCO's letter of 4th August 2023, which grounds this review because there is no statutory obligation on the DCO to publish his decision not to register a political party. It only became aware of this letter in January 2024. The ANC's explanation is irrational because it doesn't come close to justifying its delay in bringing the application late. It is not impugning the decision of the DCO made on 4th August 2023. It is therefore irrelevant that it only became aware of this letter in January 2024. The ANC became aware of the impugned decision on 11 September 2023. At that stage, it took a decision to appeal the decision with the Electoral Commission in terms of Section 16, subsection 2. It lodged the appeal on 20th September 2023. The Electoral Commission considered the ANC's appeal and dismissed it on 24th November 2023. The ANC alleges that it discussed the 24th November 2023 decision internally. A decision was made to pursue legal proceedings. It was only able to instruct its attorneys on 26th December 2023 to institute this application. Between the 26th of December and the 31st of December 2023, several consultations between ANC and its officials and I'll read that again. Several consultations between ANC officials and its legal representatives were held. After these consultations, its legal representatives started drafting papers. It blames the delay in bringing the application on the timing of the Electoral Commission's 24th November 2023 decision, as well as the fact that its members and legal team were closing offices for the December holidays. To lessen its inordinate delay in bringing this application, it contends that the clock started ticking on 24th November 2023, yet it painstakingly explained that it is not impugning this decision in these proceedings. What renders the ANC's explanation even more irrational is that it did appeal the impugned decision to the Electoral Commission within the prescribed period. The period is prescribed by Section 16, subsection 2B. This resulted in the Electoral Commission's 24 November 2023 decision. It does not impugn this decision in these proceedings. It impugns the decision the DCEO took on 7 September 2023, which it became aware of on 11 September 2023. Therefore, the fact that the ANC initially decided to appeal the 7 September decision to the Electoral Commission does not justify the delay in bringing the present application. The timing of the 24th November 2023 decision also does not justify the delay in bringing this application. Notwithstanding that this decision taken on the 24th November 2023 does not justify the delay, the ANC also fails to fully explain why it took more than 1 month that decision was taken to discuss and decide its next course of action. If its offices were closing for the festive season, the statutory requirement for urgency in this application ought to have urged it to act with the requisite urgency. It fails to state on what date its offices closed in December 2023. Ironically, it instructed its attorneys in the peak of the December holiday period on 26 December 2023. It fails to explain why it could not do so earlier. It offers no explanation why it took a further 2 weeks after it instructed its attorneys for the application to be instituted. In any event, these omissions are of no moment because the ANC's appeal to the Electoral Commission against the 7 September decision does not justify the delay. It ought to have instituted the present application within 3 days of becoming aware of the impugned decision. At that point, the festive season was more than 3 months away. The ANC's contention that it only became aware of the DCO 4th August 2023 letter to MK in January 2024 also does not justify the delay. It concedes that it should have been more diligent in accessing MK's registration file at the Electoral Commission. Notably, the ANC underplays the primary cause of its predicament. It blames the fact that it was not informed of the DCO's letter of 4th August 2023 because there's no statutory obligation on the DCO to publish the rejection of an application for political party registration. The statutory obligation to inform a third party of a decision not to register a political party is implicit in Section 16, subsection 2 of the Electoral Act. This provision regulates appeals against the DCO's decision to register or not to register a political party. Initially, this section gave any person the right to appeal the DCO's decision to register or not to register a political party. It was amended in 2021 to limit the right to appeal against the decision not to register a political party to the applicant for registration and the decision to register a political party to a third party who objected to the application for registration during the 14-day objection period, which runs from the date of publication of the Section 15, subsection 4BA notice in the Government Gazette. This statutory amendment is important as it enhances the Electoral Commission's internal dispute resolution mechanism provided for in the Electoral Commission Act. It affords third parties an opportunity to express their interest in an application for registration of a political party by having their objection to an application determined by the Electoral Commission as early as possible in the registration process. As evident from the present facts, electoral processes are not only manifestly urgent, as already stated, they also facilitate the realization of political rights enshrined in the Constitution. As the Electoral Commission explained, it has a statutory duty to promote the realization of these rights. Hence, its approach to applications for registration is to assist applicants to register and not to make it difficult for them to register. If a party who is grieved by the registration of a political party only raises a dispute after the decision to register a political party is made, it could have a prejudicial effect on the realization of the political right of the party applying for registration, particularly in a case such as this one, where the application for registration was made 11 months before national and provincial elections scheduled for 29 May 2024. I'll read that sentence again. If a party who is grieved by the registration of a political party only raises a dispute after the decision to register a political party is made, it could have a prejudicial effect on the realization of the political rights of the party applying for registration, particularly in a case such as this one, where the application for registration was made 11 months before
hopefully we'll be able to re-establish that connection for you.
We seem to have lost that transmission then to the Electoral Court sitting in the South Gauteng High Court this morning, delivering, of course, the judgment in the matter, the ANC versus the registration of the MK. It's a case against the IEC, and basically they're questioning the processes that the IEC followed in registering the MK party. As you heard there, the judge highlighting that there are really three matters that they looked at when deliberating over this issue. It's whether or not the delay by the ANC in bringing this matter before the court, whether there are special exceptions for that to be condoned. There's also the question of jurisdiction for the court, whether this is a matter that the court can and should preside over. And then there's also the question around the proper application of the MK, which goes to the substance of what the ANC is raising. I think just on the first issue of the delay, which is where part of this judgment has been assented so far, is that they find the ANC's decision to bring this matter now as irrational, and the judge has described it as, an irrational move, an irrelevant explanation that has been provided by the party. It's unjustifiable. The delay has been inordinate, and that it should at least have been filed within 3 days of the party knowing what has happened. So, and she's also saying that the party has underplayed the primary cause of the predicament that it currently finds itself in. So, that is part of what has come out of that judgment so far. We haven't been able to reestablish a connection to the court to bring you more of that. Of course, this is really one of the significant rulings that the Electoral Court is giving ahead of the elections that will take place at the end of May. You can undoubtedly expect more and more of these as we get into full election season. And I think also, especially, after voting is done, with the vote counting, of course, the Electoral Court literally becomes one of the biggest courts or one of the busiest courts rather that the country has, particularly during election season. So we will try and reestablish contact to the court, but if we're unable to do so, we still have about half an hour left. We can continue with what would be our normal course of business, which is of course the open line. So I'm more than happy to take your call. 086 000 2032 is the number to dial. 086 0002032. On the WhatsApp voice note line 0614-104-107. So much for us to talk about, not least of which being what has come out of the United Nations yesterday, which is really the ceasefire that has now been adopted as a resolution by the UN Security Council. We had 14 countries vote in favor, 0 against, and of course the big talking point has been the abstaining vote by the US. Now, the question is, will Israel implement this ceasefire? And how will the Security Council ensure compliance of this resolution? These are just some of the issues that they'll have to contend with. It is 9:30, time for the latest news headlines.
And in the headlines, the High Court in Johannesburg has started delivering judgment in the matter between the ANC and the Electoral Commission. The ANC is challenging the Commission's registration of the Umkhonto weSizwe Party, arguing that it is unlawful. In other news, the Good Party says it had appointed a person to chair the disciplinary hearing of former Springbok coach Peter de Villiers, as well as an independent initiator to preside over it. De Villiers was removed as a member of the Western Cape Provincial Legislature after he was found guilty of breaching their constitution and code of conduct. And the Minister of Higher Education, Science and Innovation, Dr. Blade Nzimande, will today hold a media briefing on the deregistration of the Educo Group colleges and the implications of this decision. Details on these and other stories at the top of the hour.
Stay tuned to SAFM coming up.
Buying a new TV? You'll need a paid-up TV license. Need to check your balance? No sweat at all. You just SMS your ID or TV license account number to 44210 for fast, effective balance inquiries. Secure your legal viewing fast and simple. Standard SMS rates will be charged. Terms and conditions apply. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
Did you know that government has set a minimum amount for employers to pay their employees and workers? In 2018, the National Minimum Wage Act 09 of 2018 was passed in South Africa. It makes it compulsory for all employers to pay employees and workers a minimum wage. In 2024, the national minimum wage for all workers, including domestics, farm and forestry workers, is 27 rands 58 cents per hour. The minimum wage for workers on the Expanded Public Works Program, EPWP, is 15 rands 16 cents. If your employer is not paying you the national minimum wage, please contact a labour inspector at a labour centre near you. The Department of Employment and Labour, working for you.
Yanga have a massive mission to dish out orders in Dar es Salaam against 2016 champions. However, Masandawana believe in their ability to succeed anywhere on African soil. This is the first leg quarter-final encounter of the CAF Champions League. Witness Africa's beautiful game. Young Africans versus Mamelodi Sundowns on Saturday 30 March at 8 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag We Love It Here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
Hashtag SAFM Talking Point.
When it appealed the impugned decision to the Electoral Commission, it did not raise the ground of review it raises in these proceedings. The ANC blames the DCO for non-suiting it when he considered MK's supplemented application and not a fresh one, as stated in his 4th August 2023 letter. It further contends that had the DCO insisted on a new application for registration being filed by MK, the latter would have had to publish a new section 15, subsection 4 big A notice, thus affording it an opportunity to become an interested party by objecting to MK's application for registration. Hence, it contends that the DCO's decision falls to be reviewed and set aside as it was unlawfully made. The predicament that the ANC finds itself in does not justify a wide interpretation to Section 20, subsection 1. Such an interpretation would undermine the statutory dispute resolution mechanism provided for in the Electoral Act. It also does not promote the realization of the rights in Section 19 of the Constitution. We therefore find that the Electoral Court lacks jurisdiction to review the DCO's 7 September 2023 decision. It only has jurisdiction to review the Electoral Commission's 24th November 2023 decision, which the ANC has effectively preempted, as it is not reviewing it. For these reasons, the respondent's jurisdiction, point in limine, stands to succeed. I will now hand over to my brother to deal with the merits.
Yes. Under the heading, the merits, the judgment provides as follows, and this is just a truncated version of what the judgment says. The only issue to be considered by this court is whether the DCEO acted lawfully and in compliance with the peremptory procedural requirements for the registration of a political party when he registered MK. Crystallized further, the question to be decided by this court is whether the DCEO, in having had regard to a so-called, quote, supplemented, end quote, application by MK, when he registered MK as a political party, acted within the four corners of Chapter 4 and Section 15 and 16 of the Electoral Commission Act, read with its regulations. Contrary to the ANC's contention, not much turns on the interpretation of the DCEO's letter of 4 August 2023. The ANC's case is that the provisions of Section 15.1 were not complied with by the DCEO when he made the impugned decision. This, the ANC contends, was due to the fact that the application which had been filed by MK and in respect of which there had been publication in terms of Section 15.4a had been vitiated and in effect rendered pro non scripto by the DCEO's rejection letter of 4 August 2023, in which he advised MK as follows, and I quote, "Please take note that the application for the registration of the above-mentioned party has been rejected because the signatures of supporters on the deed of foundation showed patterns of discrepancies which indicate that the signatures were made by a person or persons other than the voter," end quote. The ANC argues that MK failed to submit a, quote, fresh, end quote, application. It also failed to publish a fresh Section 15.4a notice in the Government Gazette, informing the public that it seeks registration. Instead, it supplemented its initial rejected application, even though there is no provision in the Electoral Commission Act for supplementation of an application that has been decided upon and rejected. Pursuant to such supplementation, the CEO unlawfully registered MK on 7 September 2023. The law applicable to the registration of political parties, in particular Section 15.1 of the Electoral Commission Act and its interpretation, so the argument on behalf of the ANC is concluded, does not permit an application for registration to be